The pyramids of Egypt have stood for thousands of years, and experts are still trying to understand how they were built. Ancient builders, working long before modern machines existed, managed to construct huge and precisely aligned structures. Each pyramid was made of stone blocks weighing several tons, yet they were placed with remarkable accuracy. Were the ancient Egyptians using building methods that have been lost over time? Or have modern studies still not uncovered the full truth about their techniques? Before we start this journey back to the ancient world, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you now. Share it in the comments below and get ready for an exciting trip back in time. Sacred geometry is an old belief system that looks at the idea that some shapes and proportions have a special spiritual or cosmic meaning. People who studied sacred geometry believed that the universe itself was built on simple but powerful mathematical patterns. These patterns were not just numbers, they were thought to be holy, showing hidden truths about life, nature, and the heavens. In ancient Egypt, this mysterious and beautiful way of thinking was closely linked to how they built their greatest monuments, especially the pyramids. The Great Pyramids, especially the famous one at Giza, were not just giant tombs made of stone. They were built with great care, using mathematical ideas that the Egyptians believed had divine meaning. They didn't just want to build something strong, they wanted to build something that showed the order of the universe. One of the most famous of these special numbers is called the golden ratio, which is about 1.618. This ratio is found in nature, in the spiral of a seashell, the petals of a flower, and even in the proportions of the human body. The ancient Egyptians seem to have known about this ratio long before it was named, and they may have used it in the design of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Built around 4,500 years ago, during the rule of Pharaoh Khufu, the Great Pyramid shows an amazing level of geometric perfection. Its base is almost a perfect square, and the way its height relates to the length of the sides is very close to the golden ratio. Even more interesting is the pyramid's slope angle, about 51.84 degrees, which lets its triangular sides form perfect geometric relationships when imagined corner to corner. These measurements weren't chosen by chance, they show a deep understanding of both shape and purpose. But the beauty of the pyramid doesn't stop with its shape. The way it is placed on the earth is just as surprising. Each side of the Great Pyramid is almost perfectly lined up with the four main directions, north, south, east, and west. This means the ancient builders must have had a very exact knowledge of astronomy. They may have used the stars to guide their work, especially since some narrow shafts inside the pyramid point directly towards stars that were holy in their religion. These shafts were likely made as paths for the soul of the dead pharaoh, helping him rise up into the heavens. When you look at the pyramid's measurements more closely, another amazing link appears: the presence of pi, the famous mathematical number that shows the relationship between a circle's diameter and its distance around. If you take the total length around the base of the pyramid and divide it by twice its height, the result is very close to pi, about 3.14. Some researchers think this means the builders knew about pi, even though it would not be officially discovered until thousands of years later. Others think the similarity may have happened by accident because of the tools and methods used, like circular measuring wheels. Whether the use of pi was planned or not, the fact that it appears in one of the most famous buildings on Earth has amazed scholars for centuries. It adds another layer of mystery and wonder to the pyramid. It shows how mathematics and architecture were joined together in ancient times, revealing a deep respect for nature and the universe. The Egyptians didn't only look to the sky, they also looked to the human body for ideas. The golden ratio appears not just in flowers and seashells, but in us as well. For example, the length of your forearm compared to your hand is close to this same ratio. The ancient Egyptians noticed these patterns and used them in their buildings. In fact, the pyramid's slope angle of around 52 degrees is close to the angle your hand makes when you stretch your fingers wide. This angle gave the pyramid both strength and balance, just as it gives the human hand flexibility and control. And here's something even more surprising. If you take the height of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 1 billion, the result is almost the same as the average distance between the Earth and the Sun. This might be a coincidence, but it's the kind of coincidence that gives chills and makes people think the Egyptians might have known more about the universe than we usually believe. Of course, not all experts agree that sacred geometry was definitely used by the ancient Egyptians on purpose. Some believe these mathematical links happened naturally through their ways of building and their focus on practical design. While the idea of hidden codes and secret meanings in the pyramid's design makes for great stories, there is little solid proof that the Egyptians meant for their pyramids to hold secret sacred symbols. What we do know for sure is that the pyramid shape had strong symbolic meaning. It likely represented the primordial mound, the first piece of land that rose from the waters of chaos in Egyptian myth. The sloping sides, reaching toward the sky, stood for the rays of the sun. This shape was seen as a kind of stairway that helped the soul of the dead pharaoh rise up to the heavens and join the gods. Still, the mathematical wonders built into the Great Pyramid are hard to ignore. Whether the golden ratio and pi were used on purpose or appeared by accident, the result is the same: a structure of great beauty, deep meaning, and lasting mystery. The Great Pyramid stands as a strong reminder of the brilliant minds and spiritual beliefs of the ancient Egyptians, a civilization that saw no separation between science, art, religion, and the universe. To them, numbers were not just tools, they were the language of the gods. The Great Pyramid of Giza has amazed people for thousands of years, not just because of its huge size, but also because of its amazing accuracy and the mysterious mathematics hidden in its design. One of the most interesting things researchers have noticed is that the pyramid seems to show a deep understanding of the mathematical number known as pi, the number we use when working with circles, which is about 3.14. If you take the total distance around the base of the pyramid, its perimeter, and compare it to its height, the result is very close to 2 times pi. This has made many people wonder, did the ancient Egyptians know about pi over 4,000 years ago? But pi is not the only mathematical wonder built into the pyramid. Another famous number, called the golden ratio, or phi, which is about 1.618, also appears in the pyramid's shape. If you measure the slanted side of the pyramid, called the face slant height, and compare it to half the length of the base, the result is very close to the golden ratio. This special number is found all through nature, from the shapes of seashells to the patterns of flowers, and it is often linked to beauty and balance. Some scholars believe that these mathematical relationships were added on purpose by the pyramid's builders, showing that the Egyptians had a great understanding of math and geometry. Others think that these patterns may have appeared by accident, simply because of the way they built the pyramid. While the debate goes on, one thing is clear: these amazing mathematical coincidences, or maybe plans, have captured the curiosity of scientists, historians, and dreamers for generations. No matter the reason, the presence of both pi and the golden ratio in such an ancient and massive monument is truly amazing. It reminds us how advanced the ancient Egyptians were, not only in building but also in mathematical thinking. The Great Pyramid is more than just a pile of stones. It is a symbol of a civilization that was very skilled, thoughtful, and creative. This interest in geometry and careful design doesn't end with the pyramids of Egypt. Around the world, many ancient monuments, from Stonehenge in England to the temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, seem to follow similar geometric rules. People have noticed that many of these sacred places use exact angles, careful alignments, and meaningful proportions, often linked to astronomy and the movement of the stars. Take the Great Pyramid, for example. Its 4 sides are lined up almost perfectly with the main directions: north, south, east, and west. In fact, it is lined up so exactly with true north that it would be hard to do better today without modern tools. Similar accuracy can be seen at places like Chichen Itza in Mexico. This raises an interesting question. Could it be that ancient civilizations all over the world shared some knowledge of the stars and mathematics, or even exchanged ideas with each other? The golden ratio also appears again and again in ancient buildings. It is found not only in the Great Pyramid, but also in the design of the Parthenon in Greece and in some Mayan temples. This shared use of the golden ratio across so many different cultures has led some researchers to think that there may have been a common understanding, or maybe even contact between ancient peoples. However, not all experts agree with this idea. Many of these connections are still being studied and are not yet proven. Still, the similarities are so strong that they continue to draw interest and wonder. The ancient Egyptians, in particular, showed great care and precision when they built their pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built more than 4,500 years ago, around 2600 BCE, is a perfect example. Its base is almost a perfect square, with the length of each side measuring more than 230 meters and the difference between the longest and shortest side being only a few centimeters. That level of accuracy is truly amazing for a building made so long ago. Even more impressive is how closely the pyramid is aligned with the four main directions. Its sides differ from true north by only a tiny part of a degree, a level of accuracy that would have needed very exact knowledge of astronomy. The pyramid's slope, which is about 52 degrees, is also the same on all four sides, showing that the builders followed a very careful plan. Inside the pyramid, the same level of precision continues. The Grand Gallery and the different inner rooms have walls that meet at perfect right angles, and the passageways that go up and down the pyramid keep steady angles the whole way. This shows that the builders had a strong understanding of geometry and used it with great skill. Some modern studies have said that the golden ratio is also found in other parts of the pyramid's design. If true, this would mean the ancient Egyptians used advanced math not just for looks, but as part of the structure itself, further showing how deeply they understood design and proportion. But for the Egyptians, math was not just useful, it was spiritual. The pyramid's shape was more than a clever engineering trick. In Egyptian stories about creation, the pyramid stood for the first land to rise out of the chaotic waters at the start of time. It stood for creation, rebirth, and the beginning of all life. The sloping sides of the pyramid were believed to act like stairs to the heavens, helping the soul of the pharaoh rise to join the stars and become one with the gods. The pyramid was more than a tomb. It was a spiritual machine, carefully designed to help the king's spirit travel to the afterlife. The entrance of the Great Pyramid was almost always built to face directly north, pointing straight toward the pole star, the one star in the night sky that never moves or disappears below the horizon. To the ancient Egyptians, this star was not just any light in the heavens. It was a symbol of eternity, a star that stayed fixed while all others slowly circled around it. By aligning the pyramid's entrance to this unmoving point, the builders created more than a doorway. They created a connection between the Earth and the cosmos, linking their monument to the order of the universe itself. At the very top, the sharp point of the pyramid reached upward toward the sky, as though it were touching the divine. To the people of ancient Egypt, this was not just a structure of stone. It was a bridge between worlds, between human life and the sacred realm of the gods. Even the use of the golden ratio held deep spiritual meaning. This special number, which appears again and again in nature, in the way leaves grow around a stem, in the spiral of seashells and galaxies, and even in the proportions of the human body, was believed to be a mark of divine perfection. By including this ratio in their design, the Egyptians were not only creating buildings that looked beautiful to the eye, they were expressing their faith in a universe built on harmony, balance, and sacred order. To them, mathematics was not just a tool for builders, it was the language of creation itself. Every block of stone, every angle, and every line in the Great Pyramid reveals something about the wisdom, spirituality, and artistic genius of the ancient Egyptians. Whether the mathematical wonders hidden within its design were placed there on purpose or happened by chance, the result is the same. It remains one of humanity's most astonishing achievements. Even after more than 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid continues to inspire wonder, reminding us how deeply the Egyptians understood both the physical and the spiritual worlds. More than 4,000 years ago, the ancient Egyptians had already developed a remarkable understanding of mathematics, so advanced that it continues to amaze people even today. Unlike many ancient civilizations that used math mostly for counting or recording numbers, the Egyptians used it in their everyday lives. It guided their farming, trade, and taxation systems, and helped them plan and build some of the most astonishing structures ever made, such as the pyramids and great temples. Their number system was built around groups of 10, just like the modern decimal system we use today. They created unique symbols to represent numbers such as 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and even 1 million. With these symbols, they could easily handle very large numbers, which was especially useful for keeping track of workers, materials, and resources during massive construction projects. One of their strongest areas of mathematics was geometry, the study of shapes, space, and measurements. The Egyptians could calculate the area of rectangles, triangles, and circles, and they even knew how to measure the volume of objects like cylinders. This knowledge became essential every year when the Nile River flooded. The floods erased property lines, so farmers had to measure their land again. Geometry also played a key role in designing and building Egypt's enormous monuments, where every stone had to fit with perfect accuracy. Even though the Egyptians did not study algebra in the same way modern students do, they understood its basic ideas. They could solve simple equations, divide goods equally, and work with fractions. Instead of writing fractions the way we do now, they used unit fractions, which always had one as the top number. Evidence of their mathematical skills can be found in surviving documents like the Rhind Papyrus, which contains hundreds of problems related to construction, trade, and resource distribution. Their skills went far beyond practical math. They also had an artistic and intuitive understanding of proportion and balance. One of the most fascinating examples of this is the way they may have used the golden ratio in their architectural designs. The golden ratio, roughly equal to 1.618 to 1, appears naturally in many living things and has been associated with beauty and harmony for centuries. While the Egyptians probably did not write down this number as we do today, the Great Pyramid of Giza shows proportions that match it very closely. If you compare the slanted side of the Great Pyramid to half its base, the ratio comes remarkably close to the golden number. The angle used in its construction, about 52 degrees, not only gives the pyramid an elegant shape but also makes it extremely strong. This combination of beauty and durability helped the pyramid survive more than 4 millennia. Modern researchers continue to be amazed by the precision of these ancient structures. The Great Pyramid is aligned almost perfectly with the 4 main directions of the Earth: north, south, east, and west. It was built more than 4,500 years ago, yet the sides of the pyramid point toward true north with an error of less than a single degree. This is an extraordinary achievement for a civilization that had no modern instruments, compasses, or digital tools. Inside the Great Pyramid, there is a narrow passageway that points toward the North Star of that ancient time, a star called Thuban in the constellation Draco. Some scholars believe this alignment means the pyramid might not have been only a royal tomb, but also served as an astronomical observatory. Even more astonishing is how the 3 pyramids at Giza are arranged. Many experts believe their layout reflects the position of the 3 stars in Orion's belt. Although this idea is still debated, it suggests that the builders carefully studied the stars and might have used the heavens as a guide for their construction. Modern technology has allowed researchers to measure the pyramids with incredible precision. The east-west side of the Great Pyramid, for example, deviates from true north by only about 3 arc minutes, around 1/20th of a degree. To understand how small that is, imagine a line drawn from the pyramid all the way to the North Pole. That line would be off by only about the width of a single human hair after travelling a full mile. That level of accuracy is extraordinary for an ancient civilization. How did they achieve such precision? Scholars have proposed many theories. Some believe the Egyptians used the stars to find true north, watching their rise and fall across the horizon. Others think they studied the shadows cast by the sun, or used tools and techniques that have since been lost to history. There are even suggestions that they may have had a rough understanding of the Earth's rotation. Whatever their methods were, the builders clearly possessed an incredible knowledge of the sky, the land, and the laws of geometry. The tools they used were surprisingly simple yet extremely effective. One such tool was the plumb bob, a small weight attached to a string that shows a perfectly vertical line. It helped them ensure that the edges of their structures were straight and true. To make the pyramid's base perfectly level, the Egyptians dug shallow channels around the foundation and filled them with water. By observing how the water sat, they could detect even the smallest unevenness in the ground. For measurement, they used a standard unit called the cubit, based on the length of a man's forearm from the elbow to the tip of the fingers. This standardization allowed the entire construction team to work in harmony, ensuring that every stone block cut in one location would fit perfectly in another. The Egyptians' understanding of mathematics, measurement, and engineering was truly extraordinary. Thousands of years before modern tools or computers, they mastered the use of right angles, created nearly perfect square bases, and designed structures that have stood the test of time. Their achievements reveal not only their intelligence, but also their dedication, discipline, and remarkable ability to turn abstract numbers into lasting monuments of human skill and creativity. To make sure the walls of their massive stone monuments stood perfectly upright, the ancient Egyptians used a clever and simple tool known as the plumb bob. This device was nothing more than a heavy weight tied to a piece of string. When the string was held still, gravity pulled the weight straight down, forming a perfect vertical line. Builders used this line as a guide to ensure that each wall rose straight and true, without leaning to one side. It was a basic yet incredibly accurate way to keep their structures aligned. Creating the base of the pyramid, however, was a much more complicated task. It wasn't enough to make it flat, it also had to form perfect right angles. To do this, Egyptian builders used a special rope that had knots tied in it at regular intervals to form a triangle with sides in the ratio of 3 to 4 to 5. When the sides of a triangle follow this ratio, the corner between the shorter two sides always forms a right angle of 90 degrees. Today, this rule is known as the Pythagorean theorem, named after the Greek philosopher Pythagoras, who lived more than 1,000 years later. But long before he was born, the Egyptians had already discovered this principle and were using it in a practical way to create straight lines and perfect corners for their great monuments. Before laying a single stone, the builders had to make sure that the ground was perfectly level. If the base was uneven, the entire pyramid would be unstable. To fix this, they dug shallow trenches across the site and filled them with water. Because water naturally levels itself, the surface of the water showed exactly where the ground was even and where it needed to be adjusted. By carefully measuring against the water's surface, the builders were able to create a base that was flat to within just a few centimeters, an incredible achievement for a civilization that lived more than 4,000 years ago. Because of their remarkable precision and attention to detail, the ancient Egyptians built the Great Pyramid of Giza so accurately that modern measurements show all four sides of its base are almost exactly the same length. The difference between the longest and the shortest side is less than 1/10 of 1%, a level of precision that amazes engineers even today. But Egyptian builders were not only skilled craftsmen, they were also brilliant mathematicians. They understood and used mathematical ideas that would not be fully explained for thousands of years. One of these ideas was the concept of pi, the number that describes the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter. Around the year 1650 before the birth of Christ, an Egyptian scribe wrote a text now known as the Rind Mathematical Papyrus. In it, there is a problem that asks for the area of a circular field. The solution suggests taking 8/9 of the circle's diameter, squaring that number, and using it to estimate the area. This method gives a value of pi equal to about 3.16, astonishingly close to the modern value of about 3.141. Even though the Egyptians didn't know the exact formula, they had an excellent working understanding of how circles behaved. This understanding may also be reflected in the design of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was built around the year 2500 before the birth of Christ. When the total perimeter of the pyramid is divided by its height, the result is a number close to twice the value of pi. Some researchers think this could be a coincidence, while others believe that the ancient builders intentionally included this special ratio in their design, showing that they may have had a symbolic or mathematical purpose in mind. These clues reveal that the Egyptians had a very practical grasp of advanced mathematics. They might not have written equations as we do today, but they clearly understood how to apply geometric and numerical ideas to solve real problems in architecture and construction. To keep their buildings symmetrical, meaning equal and balanced on all sides, they relied on several intelligent methods. The plumb bob helped ensure walls were straight up and down. Ropes marked with knots allowed them to measure equal distances and create perfect right angles. Before building began, they carefully marked out the ground like a giant blueprint, ensuring every measurement matched the design. For circular layouts or round structures, they tied one end of a rope to a central stake and stretched the other end outward, swinging it around like a giant compass. This allowed them to draw perfect circles, ensuring that everything stayed centered and proportioned. The Egyptians even made small-scale models and detailed drawings before beginning construction. These served as plans that guided the workers as they built the real structure, helping them check their progress step by step. Their knowledge wasn't limited to mathematics and design. They were also skilled geologists. They understood which stones were best for building and how different materials behaved over time. For the pyramid's main body, they used limestone quarried nearby. When freshly cut, the limestone was soft and easy to shape, but as it dried and aged, it hardened into a durable material that could last for thousands of years. For special inner chambers and roof beams, The Egyptians used granite brought all the way from Aswan, more than 500 miles to the south. Granite is a much harder and heavier stone than limestone, and transporting such enormous blocks over such a long distance shows just how determined and organised the Egyptians were. Even more astonishing is the precision with which the stones were fitted together. Many of them are joined so tightly that not even the thin edge of a razor blade can slip between them. To help with the fitting, they used gypsum mortar, a kind of ancient cement that acted as a lubricant when positioning the stones and then hardened to seal and strengthen the joints. They even studied the shape of the natural rock beneath the pyramid. Instead of building blindly on uneven ground, they carefully shaped the foundation to match the slope of the bedrock, ensuring stability and balance. This shows not only their skill with tools, but also their deep understanding of the land itself. The Egyptians paid great attention to the pyramid's outer beauty. Once the core was complete, they covered it with smooth white limestone casing stones, polished to shine brilliantly under the desert sun. These stones were cut with extreme accuracy, often within a tiny fraction of an inch. To move and shape such heavy materials, workers used copper chisels, bronze saws, wooden sledges, ramps and levers. Every detail was handled with care, from the base to the shining peak that once caught the sunlight and reflected it across the sands of Egypt. To make the pyramid's surface perfectly smooth, the ancient workers started at the very top and slowly worked their way down. They carefully rubbed the outer layers using sandstone blocks and other rough materials that acted like ancient sandpaper. It was an extremely slow and demanding task that required great patience and skill, but the result was truly breathtaking. When they finished, the pyramid's surface shone brightly under the sun, almost like a giant mirror made of stone, reflecting light across the desert. Although thousands of years have passed, and many of the outer stones have been lost due to time, erosion, and powerful earthquakes, a few of the original casing stones can still be seen at the base of the Great Pyramid. These remaining blocks fit together with such incredible precision that even today's builders and engineers are amazed. The joints between the stones are so thin that it is said not even a sheet of paper could fit between them. This remarkable craftsmanship proves that the ancient Egyptians were far more than just skilled labourers. They were true masters of many sciences all at once, engineers who understood structure, architects who could design with beauty and balance, mathematicians who calculated every angle with care, and geologists who knew exactly which stones to use. Their deep knowledge and creativity allowed them to construct monuments of stone that have survived for more than 4,000 years, still standing proudly and filling the hearts of all who see them with awe and admiration. Just outside the busy and modern city of Cairo in Egypt, there stands a group of gigantic stone monuments rising proudly from the golden desert sands. They are majestic, ancient, and full of mystery. These are the Great Pyramids of Giza, built more than 4,500 years ago, during what historians call the Old Kingdom of Ancient Egypt. Though countless centuries have passed, and many empires have risen and fallen, these magnificent monuments still stand tall, silently overlooking the timeless Nile River. At the Giza Plateau there are three main pyramids. The largest and most famous of all is the Great Pyramid of Khufu, also known by its Greek name, Cheops. When it was first completed, it stood at a height of about 146 metres, roughly as tall as a modern 40-storey building. For more than 3,800 years, no human-made structure on Earth was taller. It held that record for nearly 4 whole millennia, a true marvel of ancient engineering. The Great Pyramid was built from around 2,300,000 blocks of limestone, each weighing about 2.5 tons, about the same as a large car. The question of how ancient builders managed to move, lift, and place these stones so precisely remains one of history's greatest puzzles. Their skill, planning, and dedication were beyond extraordinary. Beside the Great Pyramid stand 2 other grand structures. The second pyramid belonged to Pharaoh Khafre, the son of Khufu. Although it is slightly shorter, it was built on higher ground, giving the illusion that it is just as tall, or even taller, than his father's. The third and smallest pyramid belonged to Pharaoh Menkaure, Khafre's son. Yet even the smallest of these pyramids is a massive structure that would tower over most modern buildings today. Guarding this awe-inspiring site is the Great Sphinx, a huge limestone statue with the body of a lion and the face of a man, believed by many to represent Pharaoh Khafre himself. The Sphinx, with its calm and mysterious expression, adds even more wonder to the Giza landscape, making the entire site feel almost timeless. The Giza necropolis, as this vast area is called, includes not only the three main pyramids but also smaller pyramids, temples, and many tombs. All of these were built for one sacred purpose, to serve as eternal resting places for the pharaohs and to help them on their spiritual journey into the afterlife. The ancient Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but a passage into another life. They filled these grand tombs with treasures, food, clothing, and tools so their kings could live comfortably in the next world. Historians believe the construction of the Great Pyramid of Khufu began around 4,600 years ago during Egypt's 4th dynasty. It was likely built between the years 2560 and 2540 before the Common Era. Pharaoh Khafre's pyramid followed soon after, around 2520 before the Common Era, and Pharaoh Menkaur's pyramid was completed around 2490 before the Common Era. These dates are not just estimates. They come from careful research, including radiocarbon dating of ancient wood and other materials, as well as old Egyptian records carved in stone. Together, these sources tell the story of one of humanity's greatest construction projects, a project that took decades to complete and required extraordinary organization and teamwork. For a long time, many people believed that the pyramids were built by slaves who worked under harsh and cruel conditions. However, recent archaeological discoveries have completely changed this idea. Evidence now shows that the workers were skilled labourers who were well fed, respected, and even paid for their work. They lived in nearby workers' villages and took pride in their role in building monuments meant to last forever. It is believed that it took about 20 years to complete the Great Pyramid alone. That means an entire generation of people dedicated their lives to building a single monument for their pharaoh. Think about the enormous coordination that must have been required. Architects, engineers, stonecutters, artists, planners, and thousands of workers all working together in perfect harmony to bring this grand vision to life. After this golden age of pyramid building, reaching its height with the Giza pyramids, the tradition began to fade. Later pyramids were smaller, less durable, and simpler in design. Eventually, Egyptian kings chose to hide their tombs deep within the cliffs of the Valley of the Kings rather than building massive pyramids. Even after more than 4,500 years, the pyramids of Giza continue to amaze and inspire the world. Modern technology has helped us learn much about them, yet many mysteries remain unsolved. We still do not fully understand how the ancient Egyptians managed to move such enormous stones, align them so perfectly with the stars, or construct such smooth and flawless shapes on such a huge scale. These unanswered questions continue to fascinate scientists, historians, and curious minds everywhere. But beyond their mystery, the pyramids are symbols of something much deeper. They represent the power and vision of the pharaohs, their connection to the gods, and their eternal quest for life after death. Built during the Old and Middle Kingdoms, beginning over 4,500 years ago, these colossal stone monuments were never meant to fade away. They were designed to last forever, just like the souls of the kings they were built for. The shape of the pyramid itself was no accident. Many scholars believe it symbolized the rays of the sun reaching down to earth. Since the pharaoh was seen as the living son of the sun god Ra, the pyramid's shape may have represented his spirit's path upward, back to the heavens, to join the gods once more. Inside each ancient pyramid lay a hidden world of passageways, chambers, and carefully crafted rooms that told the story of a civilization's devotion to its rulers and gods. Deep in the heart of the pyramid rested the body of the pharaoh, preserved with great care through the process of mummification. Around him were placed all the things he might need in the afterlife: food and water for nourishment, fine clothing for comfort, shining jewellery made of gold, royal furniture for rest, and even large boats meant for sailing across the mysterious world beyond death. The pyramid did not stand alone. Around it were smaller pyramids for the queens, temples where priests held sacred ceremonies, and courtyards where offerings were left to honour the spirit of the dead pharaoh. Every part of this grand complex was designed to keep the ruler's memory alive, and to ensure that his soul would live forever among the gods. However, building such gigantic monuments was not only a matter of faith or personal devotion, it was also a great political effort. Constructing a pyramid required enormous amounts of stone, wood, food, and tools. Thousands of skilled workers, artisans, engineers, and labourers had to work side by side for many years under careful organisation. This massive project united the entire country and reminded everyone that the pharaoh's power came not only from his crown, but also from his divine connection to the heavens. Among all these majestic tombs, none shines brighter than the Great Pyramid of Giza, the most famous and astonishing of them all. It was built for Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled around 2,560 years before the Common Era. When completed, the Great Pyramid stood about 480 feet tall, around 146 meters, making it roughly the height of a modern 45-story building. Although the outer white limestone casing has mostly disappeared with time, the pyramid still rises proudly to about 450 feet, even after more than 4,500 years. For nearly 4,000 years, the Great Pyramid held the record as the tallest structure ever built by human hands. It was not until the 19th century that modern steel buildings finally reached greater heights, powered by cranes and electricity, technologies that were unknown to the ancient builders. The Great Pyramid's brilliance lies not only in its height, but also in its precision. Its sides are aligned almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The relationship between its height and base shows a deep understanding of geometry and proportion, revealing how advanced Egyptian knowledge was for its time. Many experts are still amazed at how such accuracy was achieved with such simple tools. The scale of the construction is equally breathtaking. The pyramid is estimated to weigh around 6 million tons, about the same as 15,000 fully loaded jumbo jets. It was built from roughly 2.5 million limestone blocks, each weighing about 2.5 tons. Some of the granite blocks used inside the burial chambers are even heavier, reaching up to 80 tons each. All this was done without the help of modern machines. The workers relied on copper tools, ropes, wooden sleds, and ramps made from mud bricks to move the massive stones. They pushed, pulled, and lifted, using clever engineering techniques that still amaze scientists and engineers today. Every material was chosen with care. The main body of the pyramid was built from limestone, which was plentiful and easy to carve. For the inner chambers and passageways, the builders used granite from Aswan, a very hard and durable stone that provided strength and protection. This granite had to be transported from more than 800 kilometers away, a journey that required remarkable organization and effort. Wood, especially cedar and other strong types, was used to create sleds, levers, and rollers. Lime mortar mixed with sand and water filled small gaps and helped hold the stones together. Although historians still debate exactly how such huge stones were lifted into place, one thing is certain: the ancient Egyptians were masters of architecture, engineering, and teamwork. Most researchers believe the Great Pyramid took between 20 and 30 years to complete, and that as many as 100,000 people worked on it. Contrary to old stories, these workers were not slaves. Many were skilled builders, craftsmen, and farmers who joined the project during the annual flooding of the Nile, when fields could not be farmed. But the pyramid was more than just a symbol of power. It was a bridge to eternity. Pharaoh Khufu believed that his soul would live forever and that his pyramid would serve as his doorway to the afterlife. Inside, his body and treasures were kept safe for eternity, while outside, priests and worshippers performed rituals to keep his spirit alive through prayers and offerings. Deep inside the towering Great Pyramid of Giza, there are long, narrow tunnels that have fascinated and puzzled people for countless generations. These mysterious shafts, often called air shafts, are not really meant for ventilation at all. Instead, they stretch out from two important rooms inside the pyramid, the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber, and point towards certain stars in the night sky, as it appeared to the ancient Egyptians thousands of years ago. Many experts believe these shafts were not simply architectural features, but had deep spiritual meaning. They were thought to guide the soul of the deceased pharaoh into the heavens. The northern shaft from the King's Chamber points toward a group of stars that never set below the horizon, known as the circumpolar stars. The Egyptians believed these stars represented eternity, for they were the ones that never die. The southern shaft of the King's Chamber, on the other hand, aligns with the stars of Orion's belt, associated with the god Osiris, the powerful ruler of the afterlife. The Queen's Chamber has its own pair of mysterious shafts. One points toward those same eternal stars in the north, while the other aligns with Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. To the ancient Egyptians, Sirius was sacred. It was connected to the goddess Isis, the wife of Osiris, and its yearly appearance at dawn signalled the coming flood of the Nile River, marking the start of the new year and a new season of life along the riverbanks. Some people think these shafts were built so that the pharaoh's soul could travel through them to reach the stars and join the gods in the afterlife. Others believe they might have had more practical purposes. Perhaps they helped workers lift or lower building materials, or maybe they were used to observe the stars for religious ceremonies. Whatever the true reason, these shafts are astonishingly precise, showing that the ancient Egyptians possessed an incredible understanding of astronomy and remarkable skill in stone construction. The King's Chamber itself is one of the most extraordinary achievements of ancient engineering. It was built using enormous blocks of granite brought from the city of Aswan, more than 500 miles south of Giza. Some of these blocks weigh as much as 70 tons each. They were transported along the Nile River on large wooden boats during the annual flood season, when the water was high enough to carry such heavy loads. When the stones reached Giza, workers used clever methods to move and position them. They likely dragged them on wooden sleds, up long ramps made of mud and limestone chips, and used levers to shift them into place. To shape the hard granite blocks, they used copper chisels, bronze saws, and bits of stone harder than granite itself. Some modern researchers even believe they might have used simple pulley systems or counterweights to lift the stones with surprising precision. The builders were careful and exact in everything they did. They used simple but effective tools such as plumb bobs, set squares, and levelling instruments to make sure every angle was perfect and every line was straight. One clever building method they used is called corbelling. Each layer of stone was set slightly inward from the one below it, allowing the ceiling to bear the massive weight above without collapsing. The craftsmanship in the King's Chamber is truly breathtaking. The granite blocks fit together so tightly that even the thinnest sheet of paper could not slip between them. And remember, all of this was done more than 4,000 years ago, long before modern machinery existed. Even today, architects and engineers are amazed at how perfectly these ancient builders worked, using only simple hand tools and pure ingenuity. The Great Pyramid is filled with mysteries like these. The small shafts, for example, may seem minor compared to the rest of the monument, but they connect the pharaoh's journey to the stars with the physical structure of the pyramid itself, blending engineering and spirituality into one astonishing design. Another great mystery lies in the pyramid's silence and emptiness. Unlike most tombs of later times, the interior of the Great Pyramid has no colourful paintings, no hieroglyphic writings, and no carved decorations. Its walls are plain stone, smooth, bare, and silent. This makes it very different from other pyramids built later, which were covered inside with scenes of gods, rituals, and symbols of life and death. One explanation is that the Great Pyramid was built around 2,550 years before the birth of Christ, during a time when the focus was more on the structure's perfection than on decoration. The pyramid itself was the message, a monument of eternity meant to guard the pharaoh's soul forever. Another idea is that the method of construction made it impossible to decorate the interior once it was built. The pyramid was assembled from the inside outward, layer by layer, leaving no room for artists or workers to enter later and carve the walls. And since the outer surface was once covered in gleaming white limestone that reflected the sunlight brilliantly, perhaps the builders believed no further decoration was necessary. Some historians wonder whether decorations once existed but were lost or removed over time, yet no traces of paint, carving, or chisel marks have ever been found to suggest that. So, the mystery of the pyramid's empty chambers remains unsolved to this day. Beneath the pyramid lies another puzzling feature, the subterranean chamber. This unfinished room is cut directly into the bedrock, about 100 feet below the pyramid's base. Its walls and floor are rough and uneven, unlike the carefully finished rooms above. No one truly knows what purpose it served. One theory suggests that it was originally intended to be the burial chamber of the pharaoh Khufu, but that the plan was later changed while construction was underway. Perhaps the builders faced structural problems, or maybe religious beliefs evolved during the project. The rough, incomplete appearance of the chamber seems to support this idea. One idea about the mysterious underground room beneath the Great Pyramid is that it wasn't built for any practical purpose at all, but rather for a symbolic one. In ancient Egyptian belief, The underworld was a dark and shadowy place that existed deep beneath the earth, a realm where souls had to travel before they could rise into the heavens. So, this strange, unfinished chamber might have been meant to represent that very passage, the hidden and sacred part of the pharaoh's journey from death to eternal life among the stars. Still, not everyone agrees on that. Some scholars believe the room had a more down-to-earth use. It could have been a storage area for treasures, food, or tools that the pharaoh would need in the afterlife. Others think it was connected to the pyramid's construction process, perhaps used to help align the structure perfectly with the stars, or even to store water during building. But just like so many other secrets of the Great Pyramid, the true purpose of this subterranean chamber remains one of history's great mysteries. Every wall, every passageway, and every stone inside this colossal monument continues to puzzle and inspire, reminding us of the incredible skill and deep mystery of the ancient Egyptians. Before the Egyptians could even begin stacking the pyramid's mighty stones, they had to prepare its foundation with astonishing care. Long before the first block was laid, they worked to make the ground absolutely level, something that sounds simple but required breathtaking precision. They didn't guess or rely on luck. They used clever engineering and exact measurements that still amaze modern experts. The builders started by studying the natural limestone bedrock of the Giza plateau. Wherever they found uneven spots or bumps, they carefully chipped them away using copper chisels and bronze saws tipped with hard stones or jewels. It was slow, exhausting work under the blazing Egyptian sun, but they continued patiently until the surface became smooth. To check if the ground was perfectly level, they dug shallow trenches and filled them with water. Because water naturally finds a flat level, this simple trick gave them an accurate guide, like an early form of the modern leveling tools engineers use today. To make the surface even more perfect, they went a step further, using a method we now call true leveling. They carved shallow channels into the bedrock and poured water into them. Then they carefully marked the waterline on the sides of the channels. Any part of the ground that rose above that line was shaved down, little by little, until the whole base matched the water's level. The result was astonishing. The entire base of the Great Pyramid, covering about 13 acres, varied in height by less than half an inch, less than the thickness of a human finger. When the surface was finally ready, workers filled any tiny dips or hollows with smaller limestone blocks, shaping them so precisely that they blended seamlessly with the surrounding rock. On top of this flawless base, they placed large, smooth casing stones made of white limestone. These were polished to a brilliant shine, reflecting sunlight so brightly that the pyramid must have gleamed like a beacon across the desert. This sturdy and perfectly level foundation is one of the main reasons the Great Pyramid has survived for more than 4,500 years. Deep inside the pyramid lies another hidden masterpiece of engineering, the relieving chambers built above the king's chamber. These 5 empty spaces stacked one on top of another were not built for beauty but for strength. The enormous stones of the pyramid pressed down with unimaginable force, and without these chambers the ceiling of the king's chamber would have cracked under the weight. The builders solved this problem by using massive granite beams, and the uppermost chamber had a peaked or triangular roof that cleverly redirected the pressure away from the centre and toward the sides. Thanks to this brilliant design, the king's chamber still stands strong today. Yet, these chambers are not only impressive feats of construction, they also offer rare clues about how the pyramid was built. On the granite walls, workers left faint red markings, symbols, names of work crews, and even possible notes or instructions. These painted marks are like whispers from the past, preserved for over 4 millennia, offering a direct connection to the people who built one of the world's greatest wonders. Some researchers also think these chambers may have held a deeper spiritual meaning. Perhaps they were connected to the Egyptians' religious beliefs, or aligned with certain stars in the night sky. Whatever their true purpose, they continue to captivate scientists, archaeologists, and dreamers alike. The king's chamber itself stands apart for another reason: its material. While most of the pyramid was built from limestone, the king's chamber was crafted entirely from granite, a stone so tough that even modern tools struggle to cut it. The Egyptians chose it deliberately, believing that such strength was fitting for the resting place of a divine ruler. Granite could withstand the enormous weight pressing down from above and protect the chamber from intruders. But beyond its toughness, granite also carried deep symbolism. Its reddish hue represented the light of the sun and the promise of rebirth. ideas central to the Egyptian belief in life after death. By surrounding the pharaoh's body with this powerful stone, they were sending him into eternity wrapped in the very essence of the sun god. Meanwhile, the rest of the pyramid was built mostly from limestone, plentiful, strong, and easier to carve. The Egyptians chose every material with purpose and precision, blending practicality with sacred meaning. This perfect balance of art, science, and faith helped their creation stand firm through the ages. Even today, the Granite King's Chamber remains one of the best preserved parts of the entire structure. And then there is one of the strangest discoveries of all, the so-called door hidden inside the pyramid. At the end of a narrow shaft leading from the Queen's chamber, explorers found a small slab of stone fitted with tiny copper pieces. Many thought it must be a secret door hiding some treasure or an undiscovered chamber beyond. When tiny robots were sent to investigate, they revealed something unexpected. The stone was not a door at all, but a blocking stone, and the copper pieces were not handles. They might have been purely ceremonial. Behind this stone, another small space was found, but what lies beyond that remains a mystery to this day. Some believe these shafts were meant to guide the pharaoh's spirit toward the stars, allowing him to ascend and join the gods in the afterlife. Others think they served practical purposes, perhaps ventilation or alignment with certain constellations. Whatever the answer may be, these secret shafts and mysterious stones remind us just how much we still have to learn about this ancient masterpiece. Finally, the precision of the pyramid's stonework is nothing short of breathtaking. The giant blocks fit together so perfectly that even today, after thousands of years, you cannot slip a blade between them. The Egyptians achieved this using simple yet ingenious tools: copper chisels, bronze saws, and sand as an abrasive. First, they roughly shaped the stones, and then they perfected the fit through a process called truing. This involved rubbing two blocks together with sand between them, slowly grinding both surfaces until they matched perfectly. For the finest joints, especially in sacred or royal structures, they used water and light to check smoothness. By pouring water between stones and watching how it reflected light, they could see the tiniest imperfections and polish them away until the reflections were flawless. To keep everything straight and level, they used plumb bobs, weights hanging on strings, and stretched cords to mark exact lines. These simple but clever techniques gave them an accuracy that still astonishes modern engineers. More than 4,500 years ago, the ancient Egyptians built one of the most astonishing monuments ever created by human hands, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Rising proudly from the sandy plateau near the Nile, it stood as a breathtaking symbol of human determination and intelligence. What still amazes the world today is not only its enormous size, but also the unbelievable accuracy with which it was built. Even with all the advanced machines, computers, and measuring tools we have now, very few modern structures can match the precision achieved by those ancient builders working only with ropes, copper tools, and their brilliant minds. At the base of the Great Pyramid, the four corners form almost perfect right angles, each very close to 90 degrees, with an error so tiny that it is less than 1/20th of a single degree. Imagine achieving that kind of accuracy without computers or lasers, just by using simple materials and pure skill. The workers who cut, shaped, and positioned the huge limestone blocks did so with a level of care and understanding that continues to astonish engineers and scientists today. The scale of their achievement becomes even more incredible when we remember just how massive the Great Pyramid really is. In its original form, it rose to a height of about 146 meters, nearly as tall as a 40-story building. Each side of its base stretched about 230 meters long, forming an area larger than 5 football fields or over 5 hectares of land. To maintain such perfect angles and straight lines across that vast space, using only simple tools, shows the remarkable intelligence and dedication of the ancient Egyptian architects and workers. This careful design was not just for appearance. Every angle, every line, every block had a purpose. The pyramid's perfect geometry allowed its tremendous weight, made up of millions of stone blocks, to be distributed evenly. This made it incredibly strong and stable, helping it survive for more than 4,000 years through earthquakes, desert winds, and countless storms of sand and time. Its triangular sides were not only beautiful but also mathematically powerful, turning the structure into one of the most enduring buildings on Earth. Scholars have long noticed something mysterious about the pyramid's proportions. If you take the length around its base and divide it by twice its height, the result is a number astonishingly close to the mathematical constant known as pi, about 3.14. This is the same number that connects a circle's circumference to its diameter. Could this be a coincidence? Did the Egyptians truly understand such advanced mathematics? Some experts believe they must have known about these geometric relationships, while others think the perfect proportions were achieved through intuition, practical experience, or a deep sense of harmony in design. Whatever the truth may be, the result is breathtaking. The builders managed to create a monument that reflects mathematical principles still studied and admired today. It proves that ancient Egyptian engineering was far more advanced than most people imagine, and it continues to inspire modern architects and scientists who study its mysteries. The pyramid's strength and long life are also thanks to its amazing precision. Even the base, which supports the entire structure, was leveled with extraordinary care. Modern measurements show that the difference in height between the highest and lowest points of the base is less than 1 inch, across a span of more than 456 feet. To put that in perspective, if the Great Pyramid was scaled up to the size of the entire Earth, the tallest bump on its surface would be no higher than a small hill. This incredible flatness prevented the structure from leaning, cracking, or sinking unevenly, allowing it to remain standing for over 45 centuries. The Egyptians also used an exact and practical system of measurement to achieve such results. Their main unit was called the royal cubit, which was about 52.4 centimeters long, roughly the length of a man's forearm from elbow to fingertip. To ensure greater precision, they divided the cubit into smaller units, the palm equal to 1/7 of a cubit, and the digit equal to 1/28 of a cubit. With these small divisions, they could measure and align the massive stone blocks with astonishing accuracy. To determine slopes and angles, they used a clever system called the sect, which measured how far a surface extended sideways for each cubit of height it gained. For the Great Pyramid, the sect was 5.5 palms per cubit, giving it steep sides that rose at an angle of about 52 degrees. These measurements were not chosen at random. They were the secret behind the pyramid's perfect symmetry and its lasting stability. But the mysteries don't end there. Some researchers have found something truly extraordinary hidden within the pyramid's dimensions. If you measure the distance around its base, that number happens to equal exactly 1/2 of 1 minute of latitude on the Earth's surface at the equator. Multiply that by 60, and then by 60 again, and you get a number that matches the Earth's polar circumference. Could it be that the ancient Egyptians somehow knew the size of our planet thousands of years before modern science discovered it? Most experts say this is just a coincidence, but even so, the idea is thrilling. Whether by design or accident, the Great Pyramid seems to mirror the very shape and size of our world. One of the most amazing facts about the Great Pyramid is how perfectly it is lined up with the directions of the Earth: north, south, east, and west. The pyramid's north-facing side is lined up with true north with a mistake of less than 1/10 of 1 degree. That means that even with all our modern tools, building something this perfectly aligned would still be very hard. Yet, the ancient Egyptians managed to do it with simple tools made of copper and bronze, thousands of years ago. This perfect alignment was no accident. It shows that the ancient builders had a deep understanding of the sky. To find true north, they probably studied the night sky for many years, watching stars that never rise or set, called circumpolar stars. These stars move around the north celestial pole, and by observing them, the Egyptians could find the exact direction of north with great accuracy. But why go to all this effort? For the Egyptians, such exactness had many uses. First, it helped them make accurate sundials and calendars. These were important for planning farming seasons, as the yearly flooding of the Nile River was closely connected to the sun and stars. Also, lining up the pyramid with the heavens likely had spiritual meaning. The ancient Egyptians believed their pharaohs were linked to the gods and the stars, and by pointing the pyramid toward the sky, they may have been helping the ruler's soul rise to the afterlife and join the eternal order of the universe. This level of knowledge about the sky tells us something very important. Ancient people were much more advanced than many think. The Great Pyramid challenges modern ideas about what humans thousands of years ago were able to do. It shows that they were not just building tombs, they were building cosmic monuments, filled with purpose and precision. the pyramid's stone blocks also tell a story of amazing skill. Modern engineers are still amazed by how carefully these stones were cut and placed. The main body of the pyramid is made from huge limestone blocks, each weighing several tons. These stones were carved very evenly, often about 1 meter high and over 2 meters long. But even more amazing were the casing stones, the smooth white limestone blocks that once covered the whole pyramid. These were so perfectly shaped that they fit together so tightly, you could not even slide a thin knife blade between them. Some of these stones were cut to within a fraction of a millimeter, an accuracy that would be impressive even today. The whole pyramid also shows great precision in its shape and size. The base of the pyramid is almost perfectly level. Across its full perimeter, about 430 meters, the difference in height is no more than 15 millimeters, and what makes this even more amazing is that the pyramid was built on rough and uneven ground. The Egyptians had to prepare the surface and measure every angle and height with great care. So how did they do it? The Egyptians used simple but clever tools. Copper chisels and bronze saws were used to cut stone. Wooden sleds and rollers helped move the heavy blocks. They built long ramps made of mud brick to lift the stones higher as the pyramid grew. To guide their work, they used smart measuring tools and methods to keep everything straight, level and aligned. It was a mix of strength, skill and good planning. But the wonders of the Great Pyramid do not end with its construction. The pyramid also holds deep mathematical secrets. One of the most interesting facts is that the pyramid's size seems to include the number pi, the same pi we use today to describe circles. If you measure the distance around the base and compare it to the height, the ratio is very close to 2 times pi. That suggests the builders may have known about this mathematical constant long before it was officially defined. Another mystery lies in the golden ratio, known as phi, which is about 1.618. This ratio appears again and again in nature, in the shapes of flowers, seashells, and even galaxies. Amazingly, it also seems to appear in the design of the pyramid. Some believe that the proportions of its sides, angles, and inner rooms reflect this special ratio. Whether this was on purpose or just a result of practical building methods is still discussed. But either way, it shows how closely the pyramid is linked to both nature and mathematics. In fact, one of the most important angles in the pyramid is about 51.5 degrees. This was not a random choice. This angle gives the pyramid its strong and graceful shape, and also creates a special mathematical link. When you take the height of the pyramid and divide it by half the base, the result is very close to pi. This perfect slope helped the pyramid stand tall and stable for over 4,000 years, surviving earthquakes, erosion, and the passing of time. There's also something magical about this angle from both a visual and spiritual point of view. It makes each side of the pyramid look like an almost perfect triangle, giving the whole structure a sense of balance and beauty. It also allows the pyramid to cast shadows at special times of the year, such as the solstices and equinoxes, which may have helped mark sacred days on the Egyptian calendar. When it comes to astronomy, the pyramid is full of secrets. One of the narrow inner tunnels, called the Descending Passage, is aimed directly at the celestial North Pole. When the pyramid was built, this passage pointed almost exactly to a star called Thuban, which was the North Star at that time. This shows the builders not only understood how the sky worked, but also knew about the slow movement of the Earth's axis over time, known as precession. Even the east and west sides of the pyramid line up with the equinoxes, the 2 days each year when day and night are the same length. From the Sphinx, the sun appears to set exactly between the pyramid's north and south sides during these moments. This shows that the builders were not just architects, they were also skilled astronomers with a deep understanding of how the sky changes through the year. If there's one mystery that still makes archaeologists scratch their heads in wonder, even after thousands of years, it's this. How did the ancient Egyptians build those breathtaking pyramids? When you think about it, they didn't have much to work with, at least not compared to what we have today. They had no cranes, no bulldozers, no electric tools, and no advanced building materials. Their tools were simple, mostly made of copper, stone, and wood. And yet, somehow, they managed to create enormous stone monuments that still stand tall and proud after more than 4,000 years. These structures are so precise and so perfectly built that even with all our modern machines and technology, we still struggle to understand how they did it. No one has found one final perfect answer, but there are many fascinating theories that give us a glimpse into their genius. One of the most popular theories suggests that the Egyptians were incredibly clever engineers who used a smart trick to lift those massive stone blocks. Imagine this. As they built the pyramid higher and higher, they also built a long, sloping ramp made of mud bricks, sand and earth. This ramp spiraled around the growing pyramid like a huge winding path. Each time a new layer of stones was added, the ramp was raised a little higher, creating what looked like a giant, never-ending staircase made of dirt. It's almost like they were playing the world's biggest game of stacking blocks, but with stones that each weighed several tons. Now, how did they move those giant stones up the ramp? The ancient Greek historian Herodotus had an interesting answer. He wrote that the Egyptians used sleds, wooden rollers, and levers to drag the stones into place. Picture a massive team of workers pulling ropes together, sweating under the hot desert sun, slowly dragging each stone up the steep ramp. A kind of gigantic, ancient tug-of-war where teamwork and strength meant everything. Herodotus also made a bold claim about the most famous of all pyramids, the Great Pyramid of Giza. He said it took 20 years to finish, and that 100,000 men worked on it. That's right, 2 whole decades of non-stop effort, and a workforce that could fill an entire city. It's a mind-boggling number that shows just how determined the Egyptians were. But later discoveries suggest that Herodotus might have exaggerated a bit. By the end of the 20th century, archaeologists found signs that the workforce was actually smaller, but far more skilled and organised. Instead of 100,000 men, there were probably around 20,000 workers. These weren't slaves or random labourers, but trained builders, stonecutters, and craftsmen supported by cooks, bakers, doctors, and even priests. Many of them worked during the Nile's flood season, when the farmlands were underwater and farming wasn't possible. So, while their fields rested, the workers turned their energy toward building the pharaoh's eternal home. Then there's another theory that sounds almost unbelievable. Some people once thought the pyramids were built from the top downward. According to this idea, the builders started with tall natural hills or rock formations and carved them into pyramid shapes. It might sound like something out of a fantasy story, but it's not completely impossible. In fact, there are a few pyramid-like hills in Egypt that could have inspired such a thought. Maybe, just maybe, there's a tiny spark of truth hidden in that strange idea. Whichever theory you find most convincing, ramps, carving, or seasonal work, one thing is certain: the pyramids continue to amaze and inspire people thousands of years later. They are more than just tombs. They're a timeless symbol of human creativity, determination, and mystery. And speaking of incredible ancient projects, there's another Egyptian wonder that still puzzles experts today: the gigantic, unfinished obelisk lying in its quarry in Aswan. This enormous monument was never completed, but it gives us a rare glimpse into how the Egyptians shaped their colossal stones. Archaeologists believe workers used handheld stone pounders to chip away at the hard granite. But one researcher noticed something strange. The trench walls around the obelisk had perfectly smooth grooves, as if made by a tool that scraped away the rock evenly. This led to a fascinating idea. Maybe the Egyptians used some sort of machine-like device, a tool that moved back and forth in steady strokes, removing layers of stone little by little. It sounds surprisingly advanced for such an ancient civilization, and it has made some people wonder if the Egyptians had technologies that we no longer understand today. There's even more evidence of their skill. Early Egyptologists discovered several stone cores, cylindrical pieces that had been drilled out of granite, limestone, and alabaster. The drill bits themselves are missing, but the cores show perfect circular cuts that seem far too precise for simple hand tools. Somehow, the Egyptians figured out how to drill through some of the hardest stones on Earth, an achievement that still impresses modern engineers. But the brilliance of ancient Egypt didn't stop at their monuments. They were also pioneers in daily life. For instance, they were among the first people to invent the handheld mirror, made not from glass, but from polished bronze or copper. These mirrors were beautifully decorated with carvings and inscriptions, showing how much the Egyptians valued beauty and self-care. They were also early inventors of toothbrushes and toothpaste. Their toothpaste recipes might sound strange today, but they actually worked quite well. One ancient formula used rock salt, mint, dried iris petals, and pepper, ingredients that modern scientists have tested and found surprisingly effective for cleaning teeth. Another used ground ash, which wasn't great for fresh breath but still did the job, and since they cared about smelling pleasant, The Egyptians also came up with an early version of breath mints, sweet little tablets made by mixing heated cinnamon and honey. From their mighty pyramids to their simple beauty tools, the ancient Egyptians left behind proof of a civilization both brilliant and mysterious. Even now, after more than 4,000 years, their achievements continue to shine like the desert sun, reminding us that human imagination has always been capable of wonders beyond belief. When it came to decorating their homes, the ancient Egyptians were truly ahead of their time. While the first touches of furniture design might have started in Mesopotamia, it was the Egyptians who transformed it into an art form. They loved colour and beauty, using bright inks, elegant carvings, and even inventing new kinds of papyrus paper, not just for writing, but also for decoration. They also came up with something very familiar to us today: area rugs. By weaving papyrus plants together, they created soft mats that added comfort and warmth to their homes. The Egyptians were also fond of small treasures. Their homes were filled with tiny statues shaped like cats, dogs, and people. These little figurines were made from all sorts of materials, from simple sun-dried mud to pure, shining gold. The richer a person was, the more luxurious their collection would be. Every trinket had meaning, often symbolizing gods, protection, or good luck. But the Egyptians were not only artists, they were also clever farmers. They knew exactly how to make the most of their land and water. They used oxen-pulled ploughs, heavy ones to dig deep into the soil and lighter ones to smooth it out. After planting seeds, they would send animals to walk across the fields, pressing the seeds gently into the earth. None of this, however, would have worked without water. The Egyptians became true masters of irrigation, guiding the life-giving waters of the Nile River into their fields through canals and ditches. Their irrigation systems were so advanced that later civilizations, such as the Greeks and Romans, copied their techniques. Their building skills were just as impressive. They didn't only build canals for farming, they also made them for cities and towns, so that water could reach everyone. Some of these canals were decorated with beautiful statues and walls, turning an ordinary stroll by the water into something that felt almost royal. Among all their builders, one stood out above the rest: Pharaoh Ramesses the Great. He was a ruler who dreamed bigger than anyone before him. His temples, statues, and cities still stand today, thousands of years later, proving how skillful and ambitious the Egyptians truly were. One of the most breathtaking wonders of his reign is the Temple of Abu Simbel, carved directly into solid rock. What makes it so magical is that twice each year, the same 2 days every single year, the rays of the sun shine perfectly through the temple's entrance and light up the statues inside, especially the one of Ramesses himself. It's as if the universe was shining a spotlight on the pharaoh, a celestial show planned by some of the first architects on Earth. And speaking of architecture, the Egyptians also came up with the idea of the corbel arch, a clever design that allowed them to build strong and lasting structures. Without it, many of the world's most famous ancient buildings, including the Great Pyramid of Giza, might never have been possible. Their temples and palaces were not just enormous, they were built with astonishing precision. Even now, thousands of years later, people still stand in awe of their beauty and perfection. Some temples were even designed to track the movement of the sun and stars, serving as both sacred spaces and ancient observatories. Now imagine being back in school, struggling to remember all those strange math terms: sine, cosine, tangent, and that curious number called pi, which starts with 3.14159. While many students may have wondered why such numbers mattered, the ancient Egyptians already knew their importance long ago. They used early forms of geometry and trigonometry to design their pyramids with perfect angles and proportions. And they clearly knew what they were doing, because the Great Pyramid of Giza has stood proudly for more than 4,500 years without ever needing a single repair. Picture yourself standing there thousands of years ago at the construction site of that same Great Pyramid. The desert stretches around you for miles, and where modern Cairo now stands, there is only sand and the sound of workers calling to one another. Teams of men are hauling massive blocks of stone across the ground. Each block weighs around 2.5 tons, about as much as a small car. The stones are pulled on wooden sleds that glide over rolling logs, much like giant conveyor belts made of wood. The sight is astonishing. An endless line of workers moving enormous blocks with perfect coordination. Experts believe that around 2,300,000 stone blocks were used to build just this one pyramid. Some of these blocks weighed as much as 15 tons. Most were quarried nearby, but others, especially the harder granite blocks, were brought from more than 500 miles away. With no trucks or trains, how did they manage it? The answer lies in the Nile River, which served as Egypt's natural highway. The Egyptians likely built special canals to connect the river directly to the construction site. During the flood season, when the river rose, heavy stones could be floated on large wooden boats right to the base of the pyramid. It was simple, elegant, and brilliant. But getting the stones to the site was only half the challenge. The real question was how they lifted them, stacking one on top of another until the pyramid reached its incredible height. They had no cranes or machines, only human strength, intelligence, and teamwork. Some experts think they built long ramps that spiraled around the pyramid, allowing workers to pull stones upward gradually. A straight ramp would have been too steep, so this winding design made the work possible. Others believe the ramp might even have been built inside the pyramid itself. The truth remains one of history's greatest mysteries, perhaps a secret still guarded by the Sphinx. Speaking of the Great Sphinx, did you know that the name Sphinx isn't even Egyptian? It's a Greek nickname. In its homeland it was called Horus in the Horizon, after the powerful sky god Horus. The Sphinx was originally painted too. Scientists have found traces of red pigment near its ears, showing that this enormous statue once shone with bright colours beneath the desert sun. Now picture yourself standing before it, gazing up at its mighty face. It rises 66 feet high, about as tall as a 6-story building. It's not only the largest statue of the ancient world, but also one of the most mysterious. And if you look carefully, you'll notice that the Sphinx is perfectly aligned with one side of the Great Pyramid. Its position isn't random, it's part of a grand design that connects architecture, astronomy, and sacred geometry. Once again, the Egyptians remind us that they were not only great builders, but also deep thinkers, blending art, science, and spirituality into one timeless masterpiece. The shape of a pyramid may seem simple, but it holds a quiet elegance. Each one has 4 slanted sides that rise to meet at a single sharp point at the top, while a flat base lies hidden beneath. We rarely see this base because it's on the bottom, almost as if the pyramid is lying face down upon the earth. Yet that unseen base is the firm foundation holding up one of humanity's greatest creations. And near these great stone wonders stands another ancient marvel, the mysterious Sphinx. This colossal statue, with the body of a lion and the face of a man, still gazes silently across the desert sands. Most historians believe it was built by Pharaoh Khafre, the ruler who came after his father, the builder of the Great Pyramid. That means both the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx were created around the same time, over 4,500 years ago. Together they form one of the most breathtaking sights ever made by human hands. But the Egyptians were far more than builders of stone. They were thinkers and dreamers, mathematicians, astronomers, engineers, and artists all in one. Their monuments were not only enormous, they were filled with meaning and mystery, perfectly aligned with the movements of the sun, the stars, and the sacred land along the Nile. And what makes it even more astonishing is that all of this was achieved without the help of modern tools or machines. It was human creativity, intelligence, and hard work that turned the desert into a kingdom of stone. To build the mighty pyramids that still stand after more than 4 millennia, the Egyptians used an incredible mix of clever tools and ingenious methods. They did not rely on brute force alone. Every block, every angle, every detail was part of a carefully planned design. The huge limestone blocks that formed the pyramids were cut using copper chisels and bronze saws. Copper was soft, so the tools had to be sharpened often, while some saws were believed to have tips made from harder materials, such as precious stones, to slice more effectively through the stone. Once the blocks were carved out of nearby quarries, the next great challenge was moving them, no small task when each one could weigh several tons. The Egyptians solved this by using wooden sleds and rolling logs. They placed round logs beneath a block to roll it forward or dragged it across the desert on a sled. Sometimes they poured water on the sand in front of the sled to make the surface slick, reducing friction so the block could glide more easily. Teams of workers used long ropes made from twisted plant fibers or animal hides to pull the stones, working in perfect rhythm like a living machine. In some cases, they even built simple pulley systems and used levers to lift or shift the heavy stones. These tools helped distribute the enormous weight, allowing smaller groups of people to move gigantic blocks. When materials came from faraway quarries, the Egyptians turned to their greatest natural ally, the Nile River. During its annual summer flood, they floated heavy stones down the river on large wooden boats or rafts. This made transportation much easier than dragging everything across dry land. One of the Egyptians' most important inventions for construction was the ramp. Made of mud brick, rubble and packed earth, these ramps allowed workers to haul stones higher as the pyramid rose. No one knows exactly what the ramps looked like. Some experts think they stretched straight out from the pyramid like a giant causeway, while others believe they spiraled around it in a slow climb, like the thread of a screw. Whatever their form, these ramps were key to reaching the pyramid's towering heights. To make sure every stone was perfectly placed, the Egyptians used simple but brilliant instruments. One of their favourites was the plumb bob, a small weight tied to a string that always pointed straight down. With it, they could make sure walls were exactly vertical. They also used heavy hammers and pounders made from a hard volcanic stone called dolerite to shape and smooth the limestone blocks. Another fascinating tool was the merket, which worked like an ancient sighting device. Used with a plumb line, it helped them align the pyramid's edges with the stars in the night sky. Thanks to this, the sides of the Great Pyramid were aligned almost perfectly with the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. Their deep knowledge of the heavens guided them in other ways too. They closely watched the stars that circled near the north celestial pole, stars that never dipped below the horizon. By studying their nightly motion, they could pinpoint true north with amazing accuracy. They combined this stargazing skill with simple surveying tools like ropes with evenly spaced knots and wooden set squares, creating right angles and straight lines over vast distances. Before construction even began, the Egyptians prepared the ground with great care. They waited for the annual flooding of the Nile, which left behind a smooth, wet layer of rich soil. This made it easier to level the surface and form a flat base for the pyramid. The same floods that helped shape the foundation also nourished the land, ensuring abundant crops and giving workers time to help build during the dry months. The building of the Great Pyramid of Giza, completed over 4,500 years ago, was one of the largest human efforts ever undertaken. Though old legends once claimed it was built by slaves, modern discoveries tell a far different story. The builders were skilled workers, farmers, stonecutters, engineers and craftsmen, who laboured proudly for their pharaoh. They were paid in food, clothing and shelter, and they lived in well-planned villages near the construction site. Historians believe that at different times between 20,000 and 30,000 workers were involved in building the Great Pyramid. They worked in rotating teams, each group specialising in different tasks: hauling, carving, measuring or constructing. Behind them stood a vast support network of cooks, toolmakers, carpenters and water carriers. Altogether, the total workforce may have reached as many as 50,000 people. The coordination of such a massive project shows how organised and intelligent ancient Egyptian society was. Every step, from quarrying stone to laying the final block, was planned with precision. They even used geometry to map out grids on the ground, ensuring each side of the pyramid was the same length and perfectly straight. And so, with no steel, no engines, and no modern machines, they built monuments so mighty that they still stand thousands of years later. The pyramids continue to astonish architects, scientists and dreamers alike, not only for their size, but for the genius, teamwork and spirit that brought them into being. They are not just tombs of kings, they are timeless symbols of what human imagination and determination can achieve. At the very top of ancient Egypt's carefully arranged social pyramid were the architects and building managers. These were very smart and respected people who didn't just make the plans for the pyramids, they were the main minds behind every part of the huge building process. They directed the whole project from start to finish, making sure everything went as planned. Below them were the skilled workers, special craftsmen like stonecutters who shaped the giant stone blocks, carpenters who made wooden tools and supports, and metalworkers who created tools out of copper and bronze. These experts worked with great care, placing and fitting stones so precisely that even today it amazes engineers. Most of the workers, however, were not full-time builders. They were ordinary people, mostly farmers, who worked on the pyramids only part of the year. During the yearly flooding of the Nile River, when their farms were underwater and they couldn't grow crops, these men joined the building teams. This system gave them jobs during the flood season and helped gather the huge number of workers needed for such massive tasks. These workers were not just thrown together randomly. They were carefully organised into smaller teams called crews and larger groups called files. Each group had special jobs, whether it was dragging stones, baking bread, mixing mortar, or cutting blocks. Instead of being paid with money, the workers were given food, beer, and other daily goods. Archaeologists have even found proof that they were well fed and received medical care, showing that they were treated with a surprising amount of respect. Recent discoveries have revealed even more interesting details. Archaeologists have found planned worker villages built right next to the pyramid construction sites. These villages had bakeries, breweries, and workshops where copper tools were made and fixed. This shows that the ancient Egyptians didn't just focus on finishing the job, they also cared about the people doing it. These discoveries have changed how we think about ancient Egyptian labour, showing that it was much more humane and organised than people once thought. To build a pyramid that would last for thousands of years, the Egyptians had to begin with a strong, perfectly flat base. First, they dug deep into the ground until they reached solid rock. Then they cleared away loose sand and filled any cracks or holes with crushed limestone. But how did they make sure the ground was completely level? Their idea was brilliant. They dug shallow trenches across the building site and filled them with water. Because water always finds its own level, they used it as a natural measuring tool. If the water was deeper in one area than another, they knew the ground wasn't even there. Workers would then chisel down the high spots or fill in the low ones with more limestone until the surface was completely flat. To check the angles and straight lines, they used a simple but smart tool called a plumb bob. It was just a weight hanging on a string, but it helped them make straight vertical lines and perfect right angles. With this and other tools, like star-aligning instruments such as the Merket, they could line up the pyramid's sides with amazing accuracy, often using the stars as their guide. Once the base was ready, the first row of giant stone blocks was carefully placed. These blocks were shaped to fit together so tightly that in many places you couldn't even slide a piece of paper between them. Some joints were smaller than a single millimetre. The outer stones were then polished until they shone like mirrors in the sunlight, giving the finished pyramid a bright, glowing look. To move the huge blocks, some as heavy as a small car, the builders used ramps. These ramps were made of mud bricks or packed earth, and they allowed workers to pull the stones upward as the pyramid grew taller. As each new layer was built, the ramps were made longer or higher so the stones could be dragged even further up. To control the movement of the blocks more easily, workers used wooden rollers under the stones to help them roll forward. They also used levers made from strong tree trunks. With just a small group and a sturdy lever, they could move a massive block exactly where it needed to go. To keep the pyramid's shape perfect as it rose, the builders created an inner skeleton, a stepped core made of limestone blocks. This core acted as a guide, helping workers keep the right angle and direction as they added more layers. The outer stones were fitted to this frame and polished smooth to protect the pyramid from wind and sand erosion. At each corner of the pyramid, specially shaped stones called corner sockets were placed first. These stones set the pyramid's angle and position, acting as guide points for the entire structure. During the years it took to finish the pyramid, workers constantly checked their progress against these points to make sure the shape stayed perfect. What's most amazing is that all of this, making the base level, lining up the corners, placing the blocks, was done without modern machines. The Egyptians depended on their deep knowledge of geometry, their careful planning, and their endless hard work. Their ability to build such exact and lasting monuments more than 4,500 years ago is a strong reminder of how advanced and skilled they truly were. These pyramids still stand tall above the desert sands today, thousands of years later, as powerful symbols of human creativity, determination, and genius. One popular theory suggests that the pyramids were not made by cutting and stacking huge limestone blocks, but by using a kind of ancient concrete. According to this idea, the Egyptians might have mixed crushed limestone with water, lime, and natural salts like natron to form a thick paste. This mixture could then have been poured into wooden moulds and left to harden into solid blocks right at the site. Supporters of this idea say it would explain how the stones fit together so perfectly, and how such massive structures were built in what seems like a short time. Some scientists even claim that tiny details seen under a microscope in pyramid stones look more like man-made concrete than natural rock. However, many archaeologists and Egyptologists disagree. They point out that there is strong proof showing that the stones were actually cut and moved from known quarries using traditional methods. Another more unusual theory says that the ancient Egyptians may have used levitation to move the giant stones. Yes, levitation. According to this idea, the builders might have used sound waves or vibrations in some advanced way, possibly with unknown technology, to lift the heavy blocks into the air. Some people even think this was done with help from beings from other worlds, or by a lost civilization with knowledge far beyond ours. While this theory sounds like something from a science fiction movie, it continues to inspire books, documentaries, and debates, even though there's no real scientific proof for it. There's also another interesting theory that says the Egyptians might have built the pyramids from the top down instead of from the bottom up. This idea suggests they used scaffolding and counterweights to lower stones from above. If true, it would completely change how we understand pyramid building. But most experts are not convinced, and this theory remains on the edge of archaeological thought. Another newer idea focuses on the use of water. According to this theory, the Egyptians might have used the nearby Nile River to build a network of canals and water shafts. They could have floated the massive limestone blocks on wooden rafts through water channels, bringing them closer to the building site. As the pyramid grew taller, they might have raised the water levels to move stones higher. This could have made the job easier by reducing the need for thousands of workers to pull heavy stones across dry land. However, critics argue that there's little proof for such a system, and keeping enough water in the desert would have been very hard. Among all these ideas, one of the most discussed and realistic is the internal ramp theory. This theory says that instead of using a giant ramp outside the pyramid, the Egyptians built a spiral ramp inside the pyramid's walls. As the pyramid rose, workers carried stones up this hidden path, which wound its way inside like a secret staircase. When the pyramid was finished, the ramp might have been filled in with more stones and sealed. This method would have allowed a steeper slope than an outside ramp, saving time, space, and materials. Supporters of this theory also think the corners of the pyramid may have been built first, with the ramp winding between them. This would have helped keep the shape accurate as it got taller. Some researchers point to strange patterns and hidden spaces found inside pyramids that may be signs of such ramps. While not everyone agrees, it offers a very practical solution to one of history's greatest building mysteries. Another similar idea, called the water shaft theory, suggests that the builders dug deep shafts around the pyramid and filled them with water from the Nile. These channels could have worked like locks in modern canals, letting large stone blocks float on rafts right to the site. As the pyramid grew taller, the builders could have raised the water level to move stones higher. This would have needed less manpower than dragging stones up ramps. However, like many other alternative theories, there's no clear proof for it. Experts also doubt that such a water system could have worked in the dry desert. Beyond these engineering ideas, some theories explore the mysterious and unknown. Some people believe that ancient civilizations had powerful technologies that have been lost over time. They claim that the perfect design of the pyramids, or the advanced astronomy of cultures like the Maya, must have come from hidden or forgotten knowledge. But historians and archaeologists explain these wonders through human intelligence, hard work, and learning passed down over generations. The tools and methods ancient people used may seem simple today, but they were smart and effective for their time. There's no strong proof for lost super technologies or vanished advanced civilizations. What history really shows is a slow and steady growth of human knowledge, not sudden jumps from mysterious sources. One of the most creative and fascinating ideas about how the pyramids might have been built is known as the acoustic levitation theory. This theory suggests that sound itself, when used in a very precise way, could have been powerful enough to lift and move the heavy stones used in pyramid construction. The idea comes from a real modern scientific concept called acoustic levitation, in which strong sound waves can make small objects float in the air. Some thinkers wonder if the ancient Egyptians somehow discovered a way to make this effect much stronger, using special sound chambers or instruments that produce deep, vibrating tones capable of lifting massive blocks of stone. Supporters of this idea even point to ancient stories and myths that mention music or sound being used in the creation of temples and other sacred buildings. Although this theory is incredibly imaginative, scientists say it is very unlikely. To lift something as heavy as a pyramid stone using only sound would require an unbelievable amount of energy, far more than what we can produce today, even with all our modern machines and technology. Because of this, most experts believe the pyramids were built through physical effort and clever engineering, using ramps, sleds, pulleys, and thousands of skilled workers who worked together with great coordination and determination. Still, the acoustic levitation theory continues to fascinate people all over the world, reminding us that the story of ancient engineering is still filled with mystery and wonder. Another popular idea that has captured people's imagination for many years is the ancient aliens theory. According to this theory, beings from other planets may have visited Earth many thousands of years ago and helped early humans build huge and mysterious structures, such as the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Those who support this theory believe that ancient humans, who had only simple tools and limited knowledge, could not have built such massive and perfectly shaped monuments on their own. They point to the enormous stone blocks, some weighing dozens of tons, and to the pyramids' near-perfect alignment with the stars and the four main directions of the Earth as signs of knowledge and technology far beyond what ancient people supposedly possessed. To explain this, supporters claim that these visitors from the stars might have shared their advanced knowledge, given special tools, or even helped physically with the construction of the pyramids. But scientists, historians, and archaeologists strongly disagree. They have found clear evidence that the ancient Egyptians learned and improved their building skills over many generations. They discovered ways to cut huge stones from quarries, transport them across the desert on sleds and wooden rollers, and carefully position them to form the towering, perfectly balanced pyramids we see today. Their success came not from alien help, but from human creativity, careful planning, and an incredible amount of teamwork. While the ancient aliens theory is exciting to think about, it often overlooks the true brilliance and determination of the Egyptian people. The pyramids were not the result of some magical or otherworldly power. They were the result of human vision and effort. They stand as powerful symbols of what people can achieve when they work together with skill, intelligence, and purpose. There is also another intriguing idea called the advanced ancient civilization theory. This theory suggests that long before recorded history, there might have been highly developed societies with knowledge and technologies far beyond what we usually expect from that time. Supporters believe that the Great Pyramid of Giza, built more than 4,500 years ago, may be proof of this lost knowledge. They point out its perfect measurements, its almost exact alignment with true north, and the complexity of its inner passages and chambers. These features, they say, show a level of precision that would challenge even today's engineers. Some go even further and suggest that the builders may have used unknown technologies, such as anti-gravity devices or energy-powered tools, to lift and shape the massive stones. One especially imaginative version of this idea connects back to sound. It suggests that the ancient Egyptians might have used acoustic levitation, special sound frequencies that could counteract gravity, to move the enormous blocks into place. According to this version, sound waves could be tuned to create an invisible force powerful enough to push against the weight of the stones, allowing them to float gently through the air. Some even imagine groups of priests or workers chanting in deep rhythmic tones to create these mysterious vibrations. As fascinating as this may sound, scientists explain that such a thing would require an unimaginable amount of sound energy, something far beyond what humans, ancient or modern, have ever been able to produce. Archaeologists have not found any evidence that this type of technology ever existed. Instead, most agree that the Egyptians used practical and well-planned methods involving ropes, ramps, and the strength of many workers. Still, the fact that so many people remain fascinated by these unusual theories shows just how mysterious the pyramids still are. They continue to inspire wonder, not only because of their size and beauty, but also because of the questions they raise about the limits of human knowledge. Another remarkable feature of the pyramids is their careful alignment with the stars and the directions of the Earth. Some believe that this precision could not have been accidental. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned with the north direction with an error of less than 1/10 of 1 degree, a level of accuracy that amazes even modern engineers. This has led some to believe that the Egyptians had a deep understanding of astronomy, or perhaps inherited advanced knowledge from an older, forgotten civilization. There is also a popular idea that the 3 pyramids of Giza were built to mirror the pattern of the 3 stars in Orion's belt, a famous part of the night sky. According to this belief, the pyramids were designed as a kind of celestial map, symbolically linking the souls of the dead pharaohs with the gods among the stars. This gives the pyramids not only an architectural meaning but also a spiritual one, showing the Egyptians' strong connection between heaven and earth. Most modern Egyptologists, however, think that the Egyptians achieved these perfect alignments through careful observation and clever use of simple tools. By studying the sun, stars and shadows over many years, they developed methods to measure directions with incredible accuracy. They didn't need advanced machinery, just patience, knowledge, and a sharp eye for detail. Even though ideas about aliens, lost technologies, or sound-powered levitation are fun and imaginative, the real story of the pyramids is just as amazing. They are proof of what human beings can do with creativity, hard work, and determination. The pyramids of Egypt are not only monuments of stone, they are monuments to human genius. Even after more than 4,500 years, they still stand proudly beneath the desert sky, reminding the world of the brilliance of the civilization that built them. Over the years, explorers and archaeologists have come across many strange and puzzling discoveries, objects and structures that don't quite fit what we think we know about the past. These mysterious finds suggest that ancient people might have been far more skilled and advanced than we usually give them credit for. Each discovery raises fascinating questions about what kinds of tools, machines, and knowledge early civilizations might have possessed, and whether some of that ancient wisdom may have been lost with time. One of the most famous examples is something called the Baghdad Battery, found in what is now Iraq. Experts believe it dates back more than 2,000 years to the time of the Parthian Empire. This odd object is made of a clay jar containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. Some scientists think that when the jar was filled with a sour liquid, like vinegar or lemon juice, it could have produced a weak electric charge just like a simple modern battery. Nobody knows for sure what it was used for, but the very idea that it might have generated electricity so long ago makes it one of the most fascinating ancient mysteries ever found. Another puzzle that continues to amaze the world is the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, built more than 4,500 years ago. The stones used in its construction are gigantic, some weighing around 70 tons, and yet they were cut, shaped, and placed with breathtaking accuracy. The joints between the blocks are so tight that in many places the gap is smaller than a single millimetre. Even with all our modern machines and technology, such precision would be extremely difficult to achieve today. So how did the ancient Egyptians do it? Some believe that the answer may lie in forgotten or lost technologies, tools or techniques that disappeared over time. Perhaps they used advanced measuring instruments to align the stones perfectly, or devices that allowed them to lift and move massive blocks with surprising ease. A few even wonder if the builders had discovered secrets of physics that we no longer understand, ways of reducing weight or controlling energy that sound almost like science fiction. Far to the east, in ancient India, sacred texts such as the Mahabharata and the Ramayana describe mysterious flying machines called vimanas. These stories speak of aerial battles and vehicles that could soar through the sky and even travel between planets. While most historians think these tales are myths, some people point out that the detailed descriptions of how these machines worked sound surprisingly technical. Could they be memories of a real ancient technology that vanished long ago? Then there's the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in the remains of an ancient Greek shipwreck. This delicate device, dating back to about 150 to 100 years before the birth of Christ, is often called the world's first analog computer. It used a complex system of gears to predict eclipses and to track the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. Its precision and complexity are so impressive that it seems almost impossible that something like it could have existed so long ago. Discoveries like these have led some researchers to suggest a daring idea that ancient civilizations might have had scientific knowledge and technology far more advanced than we ever imagined. Though this idea remains controversial, it continues to spark wonder and debate around the world. Take the pyramids once again. For centuries, people have tried to figure out how the Egyptians built such enormous and perfectly aligned structures without the help of modern cranes or power tools. Some think they used advanced surveying equipment to line the pyramids up with the stars and the four directions of the earth: north, south, east, and west. Others imagine that they might have had special cutting tools made from materials stronger than any we know today, explaining how they carved granite blocks with such smooth, mirror-like edges. And then there are the more imaginative theories. Some people suggest that machines once existed that could make heavy stones lighter, or use the natural forces of wind and water to move them. One idea is that the builders might have used large wooden rafts and rising water levels from the Nile to float stones into place. Another fascinating theory proposes that they used enormous kites, catching the strong desert winds to lift the blocks. These ideas may sound unbelievable, but they remind us that ancient builders were clever problem solvers, capable of using nature itself to achieve seemingly impossible tasks. Across the world, old stories and strange artifacts also hint at forgotten knowledge, or even contact with beings from beyond the earth. Ancient Sumerian writings speak of the Anunnaki, powerful figures who came down from the sky to teach humanity. In the Bible, the prophet Ezekiel describes a dazzling flying object made of shining metal, which some people think sounds like a spacecraft. The destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah has even been compared by some to the effects of a nuclear explosion. Greek myths tell of Daedalus and his son Icarus, who built wings and flew through the sky, perhaps an ancient memory of early flight experiments. And the legend of Atlantis, told by the philosopher Plato, describes a mighty civilization filled with advanced technology that mysteriously vanished beneath the waves. One especially captivating theory proposes that the ancient Egyptians might have known how to use electricity. On the walls of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, there is a carving that looks surprisingly similar to a modern light bulb. Some researchers suggest that jars like the Baghdad battery could have been used to power these lamps, pointing to the fact that there is no soot on the ceilings of many tombs, something we would expect if torches or oil lamps had been used. Most archaeologists disagree, arguing that these carvings are symbolic, not literal, and that such ideas read too much into ancient art. Still, the mystery lingers. Could it be that long ago ancient people stumbled upon scientific truths and technologies that were later forgotten? Another often ignored part of ancient building skills is the use of magnetism. Some experts think that early builders might have used naturally magnetic stones, called lodestones, as compasses to find magnetic north. By floating one on water or hanging it from a string, they could figure out direction with surprising accuracy. This would have been very helpful when they were trying to line up temples, pyramids, and other monuments with the stars or the main directions of the Earth. In some cultures, building things in line with magnetic north might also have had spiritual or cosmic meaning. Some people even think that the magnetic powers of certain stones might have influenced their choice for use in special buildings or holy places. Of course, the ancient Egyptians didn't have real levitation like in science fiction movies, but that doesn't mean they didn't use very smart tricks to achieve results that seem almost magical. They used ramps, levers, and counterweights to move huge blocks of stone. Some ideas suggest that they might have used water channels to float the stones closer to their final spots, making it easier to move them instead of dragging them across dry land. All of these ideas, whether realistic or imaginative, show one thing very clearly. The people of the ancient world were brilliant thinkers and problem solvers. Their knowledge of the stars, building, physics, and nature helped them create amazing works that still surprise us today. Even though most archaeologists stay careful and insist on strong scientific proof, the continued study of ancient technologies opens up a world of interesting possibilities. Whether these great works were the result of lost knowledge, forgotten inventions, or just pure human creativity, they remind us that there is still so much to learn about the people who lived long ago. Long ago, ancient civilizations had a surprisingly deep understanding of sound and vibration, far more than we might expect. This knowledge wasn't only used for music or ceremonies, it may also have played a big role in how they built their great stone monuments. In fact, some experts believe that ancient people used sound and vibration not only to shape how their buildings carried sound, but possibly even to help move giant stone blocks without modern machines. Take the open-air theatres built thousands of years ago by the Greeks and Romans. These theatres were designed so carefully that even the quietest voice on stage could be heard clearly by people sitting all the way at the back. The builders did this by shaping the seats, stage, and walls in clever ways to guide sound waves perfectly. Their skill with acoustics, how sound travels, still amazes scientists and builders today. It shows that these ancient cultures knew a lot about the science of sound, even if they didn't describe it the same way we do now. Some researchers go even further and suggest that ancient builders might have used vibration to reduce friction when moving heavy stones. According to this idea, they might have used certain sound frequencies to create a thin layer of air under the stone, like an early version of hover technology. This layer of air would have made the stone easier to slide over the ground. Though this idea is still only a theory, it gives a fascinating possible answer to how ancient people moved stones weighing many tons with such ease. The idea of resonance, which happens when something naturally vibrates at certain frequencies, might also have played a role. Ancient builders could have used this knowledge to make buildings stronger during earthquakes. By matching the vibrations of the building to the natural movement of the ground, they could make it sway safely without breaking. Resonance might even have helped make a foundation settle more firmly into the earth. This shows that people in ancient times might have understood more about physics and building than we usually believe. Moving from sound to metal, the ancient Egyptians were especially skilled at working with copper and other metals. Archaeologists and engineers are still amazed by the advanced metalworking methods they used, especially in building the mighty pyramids. One possibility is that they found ways to mix copper with other materials to make it stronger and tougher. These special copper mixtures might have helped them cut through the huge limestone blocks used for the pyramids with surprising accuracy. Another interesting idea is that the Egyptians might have known how to use electroplating, a process that uses electricity to cover one material with a thin layer of metal. If this is true, they could have covered parts of the pyramids with shiny gold or other metals, giving them a smooth mirror-like surface. Over thousands of years, these metal layers could have worn away, leaving behind only the rough stone. It's also possible that ancient builders knew how to shape large metal parts with great accuracy. If they used metal molds or guides during building, they could explain how the stone blocks fit together so perfectly, sometimes so tightly that not even a sheet of paper can fit between them. Even more amazing are discoveries of ancient Egyptian tools and objects that show signs of advanced joining methods, like welding. These techniques could have helped them attach metal parts together, or make tools strong enough to shape very hard stones like granite. Along with heat treatment, heating and cooling metal to make it stronger, these skills show a level of craftsmanship far ahead of its time. Some bold thinkers take these ideas even further. They suggest that the ancient Egyptians might have known how to control gravity, allowing them to lift and move giant stones without needing thousands of workers. According to this idea, they might have used sound waves to create acoustic levitation. By creating certain vibrations, they could have reduced the stone's weight, or even lifted them off the ground completely. People who support this theory often point to strange hieroglyphs and old writings, claiming they hide clues about lost technologies. When looked at with modern science, these texts are said to describe ideas similar to sound physics and anti-gravity effects. However, it's important to treat these theories carefully. Most scientists and historians agree that there's no solid proof for them. Mainstream experts believe the pyramids and other ancient wonders were built using very clever but ordinary methods. These included large groups of workers using ramps, levers, sleds, and a deep understanding of math, engineering, and teamwork. Still, whether they used sound, metal, or pure muscle power, one thing is certain. The people of the ancient world were brilliant builders and inventors. Their monuments still stand today as quiet, breathtaking proof of what humans can do, even without the modern tools we now take for granted. What's even more amazing than the size and accuracy of these structures is the fact that they were built using tools made mostly from copper and bronze, metals much softer than the hard stones used in construction. At the centre of their building work were copper chisels. These tools, made from copper or copper mixtures, were used to shape and carve the limestone blocks that made up most of the pyramid walls. Even though copper seems too soft to cut stone, it worked well for limestone, which is a fairly soft rock. Skilled workers would sharpen these chisels often to keep them sharp, using them to trim rough blocks into perfect fits. Copper saws were another key tool. These were long-toothed blades that helped workers cut through softer stones with great accuracy. But the saws didn't work alone. Workers used sand, especially quartz sand, with them. This sand, harder than copper but softer than the stone, worked like a strong grinding powder. As the saw moved back and forth, the sand helped wear down the stone, slowly cutting through it with amazing precision. To smooth surfaces or shape wooden beams used in construction, the Egyptians used copper adzes. These tools looked like a mix between an axe and a hoe and were perfect for scraping and shaping surfaces. To lift and move large limestone blocks, they used copper hooks tied to ropes. These gave them better control and strength, especially when placing blocks high up in the pyramid walls. Smaller tools like copper hammers and mallets were used for detailed work, such as carving beautiful decorations in temples and tombs near the pyramids. These tools were less about strength and more about control, letting artists create the stunning designs that still exist today. For harder tasks such as shaping granite, a stone much tougher than limestone, the Egyptians used bronze tools. Bronze, made by mixing copper with tin, was the strongest metal they had before iron was discovered. But even bronze couldn't cut granite by itself, so the Egyptians came up with a clever trick. They used bronze saws together with sharp sand. The sand did most of the cutting while the saw guided it. It took a long time, but it worked very well. When they needed to split granite blocks instead of sawing them, they used a smart mix of bronze chisels, hammers, wooden wedges, and water. First, workers drilled a line of holes in the stone. Then they put dry wooden wedges into the holes and poured water over them. As the wood soaked up the water, it swelled with great force, causing the granite to crack along the line of holes. It was a slow process, but it allowed them to break apart huge blocks without modern machines. There's a popular myth that the ancient Egyptians used diamond-tipped drills to carve stone, but no real proof supports this. People might think so because Egyptian stonework is so perfect, it seems impossible without advanced tools. But archaeologists have found no signs of diamonds, only copper, bronze, stone tools, and sometimes hardened sand. Modern tests have proven that these ancient methods really work. With enough patience, copper tools and sand can cut through even hard stones like granite. All of this shows one simple truth. The Egyptians weren't just building pyramids, they were creating engineering wonders using simple tools and brilliant minds. Another interesting method the Egyptians might have used involved water and the power of freezing cold. Workers would cut a series of lines or holes into a stone, then fill them with water and seal them. As night came and the air got colder, the water inside the holes would freeze and grow bigger. This growth, about 9% in size, created strong pressure, slowly cracking the rock along the planned lines. After several nights, this freezing and melting process would split the stone in a natural and controlled way. Though this method needed patience and a good understanding of nature, it offered a simple but powerful way to break apart huge blocks. But before those stones could be put in place, they had to be moved across long distances. This was no easy job, especially without wheels or engines. To do this, ancient builders used a smart mix of wooden rollers and wooden sleds. Rollers were simply logs cut into round shapes. Workers placed them under the heavy stone blocks, and as the block rolled forward, they would move the rollers from the back to the front, keeping the process going. This reduced rubbing and made it possible to move blocks weighing many tons using only human strength. Sleds, on the other hand, were flat wooden platforms that helped spread the weight of a stone block. These sleds were pulled by teams of workers, or sometimes by animals. To make things easier, builders often poured water or mud on the ground in front of the sled. This made the surface slippery, reducing rubbing and helping the sled slide more smoothly, especially when going uphill or over rough ground. Together, the use of rollers on firm land and sleds on soft or uneven paths created a flexible and dependable way to move stones from the quarries to the building sites. This mix of cleverness, teamwork, and smart thinking helped turn millions of heavy stones into the tall pyramids we still admire today. The ancient Egyptians were not just skilled workers, they were brilliant inventors and great engineers. To build their amazing pyramids and temples, they came up with smart ways that helped them do what seemed almost impossible: lift and move huge stone blocks, some weighing many tons. One of the most impressive methods they may have used was something called the counterweight system. This system worked on a very simple idea. If you hang a heavy weight on one side of a rope or beam, it can help lift something just as heavy on the other side. Think of a giant seesaw. When one end goes down, the other rises. Using this idea, the Egyptians could lift huge stones without needing hundreds of people to drag them. Experts believe that the Egyptians may have used long wooden beams as levers. On one end of the beam, they would tie a heavy stone as a counterweight. Workers would then push down on the longer end of the beam, which caused the opposite end to rise, lifting another heavy block bit by bit. As the stone rose, they would move the balance point, the fulcrum, making it easier to raise the block slowly toward its final spot. Another smart way they might have used counterweights was in building ramps. Instead of dragging heavy stones uphill with pure strength, they could attach stones to sleds and use ropes connected to counterweights. These would pull the sleds up sloped ramps more easily, saving a lot of effort and manpower. This method would have been very useful for lifting stones to higher levels as the pyramids got taller. But it wasn't just strength that made pyramid building possible. The Egyptians were also math geniuses and expert measurers. The accuracy they reached is truly amazing, even by today's standards. Take the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza, for example. Each side of this huge square measures more than 230 meters, and yet the difference in length between the sides is only a few centimeters. That kind of precision would be hard even with modern laser tools. To get such straight lines and perfect angles, the Egyptians must have used advanced measuring tools. They may have used simple but effective instruments like plumb bobs, sighting poles, and ropes pulled tight to make perfect right angles and long straight edges. They also seem to know a lot about the stars and the movement of the sun. The Great Pyramid is lined up almost perfectly with the four main directions: north, south, east, and west. This shows that they knew how to study the sky very accurately and use that knowledge in their designs. Another amazing fact is that the base of the Great Pyramid is almost completely flat. Across an area larger than 3 football fields, the foundation is level within just 2 centimeters. Experts think they may have used water to help with this. By digging shallow trenches and filling them with water, they could see where the ground was higher or lower and fix it until everything was perfectly even. This shows how much planning and care went into every step of building. The Egyptians also knew how to use water in many smart ways. Even though we don't have direct proof of all their methods, clues from archaeology and old writing suggest some very interesting ideas. For example, they may have taken advantage of the Nile River's yearly floods. By building small canals from the river to their building sites, they could float large stone blocks on wooden boats. This would have been much easier than dragging the stones over land. Water might also have been used in their lifting systems. They could have used containers filled with water as counterweights. As workers added water to the containers, they became heavier and helped lift stones more smoothly and with better control. Removing water would do the opposite, letting them lower stones gently. There's even a theory that they used water to soften the ground. By flooding the building area and then draining it, they could make the soil easier to shape, helping them lay flat foundations and dig trenches. When combined with their great skills in geometry and measuring, this would have made their projects even more accurate. Another interesting idea is that the Egyptians may have made their own kind of concrete instead of using only cut stones. Some researchers think they mixed crushed limestone with water and other materials to make a kind of stone paste. They could then pour this mix into wooden molds to form blocks right at the building site. Supporters of this idea point to strange things found in some pyramid stones, like air bubbles or layers that look poured instead of carved. If true, this method would have made building faster and more accurate, and it would have solved the hard problem of moving giant stones over long distances. But this theory is still debated. Many Egypt experts believe the old method of cutting, dragging, and stacking stones is more likely, based on tool marks found on the blocks. Still, the very fact that such an idea exists shows how creative and smart the Egyptians must have been. Whether or not they used concrete, their achievements remain a strong example of human creativity. And there's more. Some experts believe the Egyptians may have understood sound very well. In the wide, echoing halls of temples and pyramids, they may have used sound waves to guide their work. For example, by striking a stone or playing a certain tone, they might have listened for echoes or vibrations to check if the structure was built correctly. A clear and steady echo could tell them the angles and surfaces were right. Some even think sound helped them move stones. A few researchers suggest that rhythmic chanting, drumming, or clapping together might have helped reduce friction, or even affected the sand under the sleds carrying the blocks. This idea is still very uncertain, but it shows that sound might have been more than just music. It could have been a useful tool. Sound may also have helped workers talk across large building areas. With hundreds or even thousands of workers on site, it would have been hard to hear instructions. But if they understood how sound travels, they could have used certain tones, beats, or calls to send messages quickly and clearly. Over the years, archaeologists and engineers have done many interesting experiments to uncover the secrets of how the pyramids were built. One especially fascinating project took place on the Giza plateau, where a team led by Mark Lehner and Zahi Hawass built a small pyramid using only the tools and methods the ancient Egyptians might have used thousands of years ago. During this test, they found something surprising. When limestone blocks were slightly wet, they slid much more easily across the desert sand. This simple trick helped challenge the long-held belief that moving these heavy stones was almost impossible without modern machines. Meanwhile, in Mexico, a group of builders did a similar test to learn how the ancient Mesoamerican civilizations might have moved giant stones. Using only ropes, wooden rollers, and smart use of leverage, a team of about 12 workers was able to move a huge stone block weighing many tons quite easily. This experiment showed that the Maya and other ancient builders didn't need wheels or big animals to move their materials. They just needed teamwork, simple tools, and smart planning. In France, an architect named Jean-Pierre Houdin came up with a bold new idea, that the Great Pyramid of Giza might have been built from the inside out using a hidden inner ramp. To test this, researchers used modern tools like thermal cameras and computer models to scan the inside of the pyramid. What they found supported Houdin's theory, showing possible inner structures that could have helped workers move the stones upward from within. This is a great example of how today's advanced technology can help us solve mysteries that are more than 4,500 years old. In Egypt, archaeologists have managed to cut and move huge limestone blocks using only old-style tools. They showed that copper chisels, when often heated, reshaped, and cooled, can cut through limestone very well. To move the stones, they used wooden sleds and rolled them over paths that were either made slippery with water or covered with logs. These tests proved that groups of workers could move stones weighing as much as 70 tons without machines. Similar tests have been done in England at the famous site of Stonehenge. Researchers there used wooden sleds, levers, and rollers to move giant sarsen stones, some of which weigh up to 40 tons. Even over long distances, the stones could be moved with careful planning and a strong, organised team of people. These results show that ancient societies really did have the skill to finish huge projects using only simple tools and hard work. In South America, researchers have tried to copy how the Inca made their famously exact stone walls. They found that by using bronze chisels, hammerstones, and rough sand as a grinding tool, they could cut and fit large blocks of andesite stone with amazing accuracy, so tightly that not even a sheet of paper could fit between them. These efforts show how skilled, patient, and careful the Inca stonemasons were. Building small versions of pyramids has also helped us understand just how much thought went into their building. One big lesson is that even a small mistake in leveling the base can cause big problems as the pyramid rises higher. This means the ancient Egyptian builders had to work with incredible accuracy, even without modern measuring tools. Some researchers have also repeated ways that might have been used to lift or move giant stones. Using sleds, levers, and carefully built ramps, these models suggest that the builders could have finished these structures with a large group of workers and good teamwork. These modern tests have given us new respect for the planning skills of the ancient Egyptians. Controlling huge teams of workers, making sure there were enough materials, and managing each stage of building would have been a huge job. Even at a small scale, the amount of organisation needed is amazing, proving that ancient Egyptian society was far more advanced than many people think. Today's computer tests have taken the study of ancient building methods to a whole new level. These powerful tools let scientists try out different ideas about how ancient monuments were built, without needing to lift a single stone. In Egypt, computer tests have been used to see how different types of ramps or tools might have helped workers move the huge limestone blocks. One important finding is that wetting the sand can greatly reduce friction, making it easier to slide heavy stones. This fits with what ancient Egyptians were able to do at the time. In Central America, computer models have helped researchers figure out how the Maya built their giant temples, often on soft, swampy ground. These tests showed that the Maya used clever methods to build strong bases that stopped their temples from sinking or falling. The models also gave new ideas about how they moved and placed large stones using only simple tools and human effort. But computer models don't just help with single buildings. They also help us rebuild whole ancient cities. By combining information about land, available materials, and known building methods, these digital reconstructions give us a clear picture of life in ancient cities, like those in the Indus Valley or ancient Rome. They don't just show how buildings were made, they show how people lived, how cities were arranged, and how supplies were managed. The field of experimental archaeology still plays a big part in helping us understand the secrets of pyramid building. By trying out ancient methods in real life, researchers have learned a lot about how the Egyptians may have worked. In one test, teams moved and placed large limestone blocks using wooden rollers and sleds. They proved that even a small group of workers could move heavy stones well. This kind of proof helps disprove popular ideas that say ancient people needed help from aliens or lost advanced civilizations. Other tests focused on cutting and shaping stone. With copper chisels, bronze saws, and quartz sand, archaeologists managed to make the same kinds of marks seen on stones from the Great Pyramid. These results show that ancient tools, though simple, were very effective in the hands of skilled workers. Ramp building has also been tested. Researchers have built small and even full-sized ramps to test old designs described in ancient writings and modern ideas. These tests helped find out which ramp systems would have worked best for lifting blocks up the pyramid. Studying old quarry sites has also given a lot of information. Archaeologists have visited the old quarries near the Giza pyramids and found clear signs of how the stones were taken out. Tool marks on quarry walls, leftover stone chips, and carved ramps have helped researchers rebuild how the ancient builders worked. They used tools like copper chisels, bronze saws, and wooden wedges to split the limestone. By studying the stones, scientists have also learned how the Egyptians chose special types of rock for different parts of the pyramid. They even had the knowledge to pick the right kind of stone for each use. This shows how organized and well-informed the builders were. In recent years, archaeologists and scientists have started using some of the most advanced tools of our time to uncover how ancient people managed to build their giant monuments. These modern technologies are helping us look into the distant past without even touching the old stones. One powerful tool is called ground-penetrating radar. This amazing device lets scientists see below the ground surface without digging. It works like an X-ray for the Earth, showing what lies hidden under layers of soil and sand. With it, whole ancient cities that have been buried for hundreds or even thousands of years can be mapped out. The radar has also helped researchers understand how old foundations were built and where hidden structures might still be waiting to be found. Another important technology is laser scanning, often used with three-dimensional digital modeling. These tools let scientists make very detailed digital versions of ancient buildings. With these virtual models, researchers can zoom in to see tiny tool marks left by ancient workers, measure angles and distances very accurately, and even run computer tests to figure out how the structures were built. It's like rebuilding ancient wonders piece by piece, without ever lifting a real stone. Then there's spectroscopic analysis, a scientific method that breaks down the light reflected by a material to see what it's made of. This method has helped experts learn exactly where ancient stones came from, which gives clues about trade routes and how resources were managed. It can even show what kinds of paints were used in decorations, giving us a look into the artistic styles and colour choices of ancient cultures. Artificial intelligence is also being used in archaeology. Smart computers are now used to study huge amounts of data, including thousands of artifacts, ruins, and building details. These machines can spot patterns and links that people might miss, like similarities between buildings in different places or times. By doing this, AI may help us rediscover lost building methods that were once common but are now forgotten. One of the most hands-on and exciting parts of archaeology today is called experimental archaeology. In this area, researchers try to remake the tools and methods that ancient people once used to see how well they worked. For example, by making copper chisels, bronze saws, and wooden sleds, just like those the ancient Egyptians might have used, scientists have been able to test old building methods in real life. One very surprising discovery from these tests is how well wet sand works when dragging heavy stones. Researchers found that by pouring water in front of a wooden sled carrying a large stone block, they could cut the effort needed to pull it in half. That means only half as many workers were needed just by using water to reduce friction. This smart trick might have been a key part of how the ancient Egyptians moved their huge limestone blocks across the desert. Remaking ancient tools has also helped modern experts understand just how exact Egyptian builders were. Using simple tools like plumb bobs for checking straight lines, wooden set squares for right angles, and water levels to make things even, the Egyptians were able to make almost perfect 90-degree angles and flat surfaces across large areas. These basic tools, used with great skill, show that the Egyptians had a deep understanding of geometry and building. Through these tests, researchers have also learned more about how the work was managed. Building a pyramid was not just about strength and stone, it needed planning, teamwork, and smart management. Evidence shows that workers were divided into skilled teams, with each group working on a specific job. This organization shows that the Egyptians had advanced systems in place, even over 4,000 years ago. Some of the best clues about pyramid building have come from unfinished pyramids found across Egypt. These half-built structures are like time capsules. They show us different stages of the building process frozen in time. By studying them, archaeologists can see how the pyramids were built step by step. One of the most fascinating techniques uncovered from the study of unfinished pyramids is the method known as accretion layers. Instead of building straight upward from the ground, the ancient Egyptians built their pyramids from the inside outward, carefully placing each new layer of stone at a slight inward angle. This clever design made the structure stronger and steadier while it was still being built. It also allowed the workers to continue adding new layers smoothly, without worrying about the pyramid collapsing or losing shape. These half-finished pyramids have also revealed many traces of ramps, levers, and other smart tools that were used to lift and position massive blocks of stone. Each clue gives modern researchers a better picture of how ancient builders worked. It's like solving an enormous puzzle left behind by people who lived more than 4,500 years ago. Every broken ramp or groove in the stone tells a tiny part of the story about how these incredible monuments were raised. The same sites also show how well organized the Egyptian workforce must have been. Evidence suggests that construction was carried out by teams of highly skilled laborers, each with a specific role. Some workers carved the stones with precision, others were in charge of dragging or rolling them into place, and another group carefully aligned them to fit perfectly together. It was a massive effort that ran like a well-planned machine, an achievement that took place during the time of the Old Kingdom, around 2.5 millennia before Christ. Today, modern technology has taken our understanding of these ancient building methods to a whole new level. Using computer simulations and digital 3D models, engineers can now recreate ancient construction techniques in virtual form. They can test how these huge stone structures handled weight, stress, and pressure, discovering why so many of them still stand tall after thousands of years. These digital experiments reveal that Egyptian builders had a remarkable natural sense of engineering, even though they lacked the complex mathematics and machines we rely on today. They built by intuition, experience, and deep practical knowledge, qualities that still amaze modern scientists. Researchers have also found surprising things about ancient building materials. The Romans, for instance, used a special kind of volcanic concrete that has turned out to be stronger and more durable than much of the concrete used in the modern world. Because of this discovery, modern scientists are now studying those ancient recipes to create long-lasting, eco-friendly building materials for the future. Meanwhile, engineers are still exploring how ancient people managed to move enormous stones, sometimes weighing tens or even hundreds of tons. By using the science of geotechnical engineering, which studies how soil and rock behave, they have developed new ideas about how ramps, levers, wooden sledges, and wet sand might have worked together. Modern tests show that with careful planning, teamwork, and simple tools, ancient builders could move weights that would challenge even today's heavy machinery. The building of the Great Pyramids of Egypt and the mysterious circle of stones known as Stonehenge in England are among the most extraordinary achievements of the ancient world. Even though these monuments were built in completely different lands and under very different conditions, they both reveal how intelligent, creative, and determined ancient people were, long before the invention of modern machines or advanced technology. The Great Pyramids rose from the hot deserts of Egypt about 4,500 years ago. These massive triangular structures were made by cutting and moving enormous blocks of limestone, each weighing several tons. The stones were taken from nearby quarries, dragged across the sand, and carefully placed layer by layer until a perfect pyramid took shape. Every side of the structure was measured with astonishing accuracy, proving that the builders had a deep understanding of geometry, measurement, and astronomy. The task required not only strength and endurance, but also careful planning, teamwork, and an advanced sense of engineering. Stonehenge, on the other hand, began to take shape in the green plains of southern England around the same time, about 4,500 years ago, and continued to be built and adjusted over the next 1,000 years. Instead of a pyramid, it became a great circle of towering stones arranged upright in a precise pattern. Some of these stones, known as bluestones, came from mountains more than 150 miles away. Imagine the effort required to move such massive rocks without wheels, engines, or metal machinery. It would have taken hundreds of people working together, using wooden sledges, ropes, and rolling logs to drag the stones across rivers and rough terrain. Both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids show that ancient people had a remarkable awareness of the sky. The sides of the Great Pyramid are aligned almost perfectly with the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west, while Stonehenge is aligned with the rising and setting of the sun during the longest and shortest days of the year, known as the summer and winter solstices. These alignments were not by chance. They show that the builders carefully observed the heavens, planned their monuments according to the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, and may have used them for ceremonies connected to time, life, and the cycles of nature. The tools and methods used in both projects were shaped by the materials available. In Egypt, workers used copper chisels and bronze saws to cut limestone, along with wooden sledges, rollers, and long ramps to move and lift the blocks. In England, where the stones were much harder, the builders used hammerstones made of tough rock to chip and shape them. They too relied on wooden sledges, ropes, and logs to haul the stones to their destination. It is also fascinating that the Great Pyramids share striking similarities with the pyramid-shaped temples found thousands of miles away in South America. Civilizations in places like Peru and Mexico also built vast stone monuments in the shape of pyramids for religious ceremonies or as tombs for their rulers. Many of these were aligned with the stars or the rising sun, just like the Egyptian pyramids and Stonehenge. Yet these cultures were separated by oceans and by thousands of years, making the similarities all the more mysterious. Another astonishing detail is the precision with which the stones were fitted together. Both in Egypt and in South America, builders managed to shape massive stone blocks so perfectly that they locked together without the need for mortar or cement. The seams between the stones are so tight that even a knife blade cannot fit between them. Modern engineers still wonder how such incredible accuracy was achieved with simple tools and human effort alone. The scale of these ancient projects tells us something important about the societies that built them. The Egyptians, like the ancient South Americans, must have had well-organized communities with skilled workers, wise leaders, and strong systems of cooperation. To build such enormous monuments, they needed planners, engineers, architects, laborers, and craftsmen, all working together with a shared vision. The most famous of all is the Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza, built around 4,500 years ago. Originally, it stood at an amazing height of 146 meters, making it the tallest structure in the world for over 3,800 years. Its base measures about 430 meters on each side and is almost perfectly level, with less than a few centimeters of difference across the entire foundation. The pyramid was made from roughly 2,300,000 stone blocks, some weighing up to 70 tons. Its sides are aligned with true north to within less than 1/10 of 1 degree, an incredible level of precision even by modern standards. Even compared with other wonders of the ancient world, like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon or the statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Great Pyramids remain unmatched. While many of those other monuments have vanished into history, the pyramids still stand tall, surviving more than 4 millennia of sandstorms, heat, and time. They are living proof of the ancient Egyptians' skill, patience, and deep understanding of materials and construction. Interestingly, the Egyptian pyramids also have similarities to structures found in Asia. Ancient ziggurats of Mesopotamia and temple pyramids in Cambodia and Indonesia share the same careful alignment with the stars and the same stepped design seen in Egypt's earliest pyramids. Many of these Asian monuments also include hidden chambers and secret passageways used for burials, ceremonies, and spiritual purposes, just like the tombs and corridors inside the pyramids. When we look at the building achievements of ancient Egypt alongside those of ancient Rome, we see two very different but equally amazing traditions. The Egyptians focused on creating huge structures like the pyramids, made from giant stones and carefully aligned with the stars. The Romans, who lived more than 2,000 years after the pyramids were built, invented new building methods like concrete, arches, and domes. These new ideas allowed them to build large cities, strong bridges, water channels called aqueducts, and public buildings that still stand today, such as the Pantheon. Roman buildings were made to be useful as well as beautiful. Their roads, many of which still exist, were carefully planned and built to last. The Romans used repeating designs and standard materials so they could build quickly across their wide empire. In contrast, the Egyptians focused their energy on making grand tombs that would last forever, using huge amounts of resources to create a few truly massive structures. Both civilizations showed great skill in solving the problems of their time. The Egyptians learned how to move and stack giant stones with great accuracy, while the Romans discovered how to build large cities with running water, public areas, and well-organized transport systems. Today, the influence of both can still be seen around us, in the form of breathtaking monuments, ancient cities, and the strong curiosity they still awaken in everyone who studies history. Across the world, from the sandy deserts of Egypt to the grassy fields of North America, ancient monuments continue to show surprising similarities. Even though the people who built these great structures lived thousands of miles apart and were separated by thousands of years, they often came up with very similar ideas. One of the most interesting comparisons is between the Great Pyramids of Egypt and the large earth mounds made by Native American societies, such as those at Cahokia in what is now Illinois. The Egyptian pyramids were built around 4,500 years ago and remain some of the most famous buildings in human history. Meanwhile, the city of Cahokia flourished over 1,000 years ago and was the biggest and most advanced settlement north of Mexico at the time. At the center of Cahokia stands Monk's Mound, a stepped pyramid made of earth that rises nearly 100 feet high. Like the Great Pyramids of Giza, Monk's Mound was built with careful planning and served as a powerful symbol of religion, politics, and culture for the people who created it. What is truly amazing is how both the Egyptian pyramids and the North American mounds were used as sacred centers, places that connected people to their gods, leaders, and ancestors. These monuments were not just buildings, they were spiritual symbols. Inside many of them, archaeologists have found burial rooms and ceremonial objects, showing that both cultures used these places for rituals related to death and the afterlife. This shared purpose shows a deep universal human wish, to reach for the heavens, to honor the dead, and to create something that would last forever. Another surprising similarity is the great accuracy both cultures achieved in their building work. The Great Pyramids of Egypt are lined up almost perfectly with the four main directions: north, south, east, and west. In fact, their difference from true north is less than 1/10 of a degree, an accuracy that still amazes modern scientists. Similarly, many North American mounds are also aligned with the movements of the sun and moon during solstices and equinoxes. These alignments show that both the Egyptians and Native Americans were skilled in astronomy and understood how to follow the stars, using this knowledge when designing their sacred monuments. The Egyptians, however, were not the only ones who built in harmony with the heavens. Around the world, other ancient civilizations did the same thing in their own ways. In England, for example, the mysterious circle of stones called Stonehenge is perfectly aligned with the rising sun on the summer solstice. On that special day, sunlight shines directly through the middle of the monument, creating a golden light that marks the longest day of the year. Far to the west, in the jungles of Central America, the ancient Maya built the Pyramid of El Castillo in the city of Chichen Itza. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, a shadow appears on the side of the pyramid that looks like a snake crawling down the steps. This amazing effect was no accident. It was carefully designed by skilled builders and astronomers who deeply understood the movement of the sun. In South America, the Inca also looked to the sky. In their mountain city of Machu Picchu, the famous Intihuatana stone, sometimes called the hitching post of the sun, was shaped and placed to track the equinoxes. Meanwhile, in what is now Mexico City, the powerful Aztecs built the Templo Mayor in line with the rising of the Pleiades star cluster, which played an important role in their calendar and religion. But when it comes to pure accuracy, the Great Pyramids still stand above all others. Their almost perfect alignment and enormous size continue to puzzle and impress engineers, builders, and historians. How did people so long ago, without modern tools, manage to do such an incredible job? This question still inspires research and imagination to this day. Even places built much earlier than the pyramids, such as Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, show surprising similarities. This site, which was built more than 11,000 years ago, is known as the world's oldest temple. Like the pyramids, Göbekli Tepe has huge stone pillars, some weighing as much as 20 tons. These T-shaped stones were arranged in circles, and they also seem to be aligned with the stars. In both Göbekli Tepe and Egypt, the builders shaped and placed huge stones with such care that the blocks fit together perfectly without using mortar. This kind of work needed deep knowledge of stone carving and building, showing that even ancient societies had the skill and creativity to handle complex projects. In both places, the builders planned their work very carefully. Some archaeologists think that Göbekli Tepe's circular areas were made to mark celestial events, just like the pyramid's alignment with the stars. These shared ideas show that looking to the sky was not limited to one culture. It was a common human instinct, a way to find meaning in the stars and reflect that meaning in what they built. While the Great Pyramids were mostly made from limestone and granite taken from nearby areas, other ancient cultures used different materials depending on what they had. In ancient Mesopotamia, for example, builders used sun-dried mud bricks to make tall ziggurats. These stepped temples were often covered with baked bricks on the outside to protect them from the weather. Even though the materials were different, the goal was the same: to build something tall, strong and lasting that connected heaven and earth. In Central America, the Maya and Aztecs built their own pyramids using cut limestone and rubble. These were often brightly painted and decorated with carvings and pictures of gods, animals and heavenly events. Unlike the smooth sides of the Egyptian pyramids, these stepped structures were colourful and artistic, combining beauty with engineering. In Asia, the Great Wall of China stretched across mountains and valleys, using whatever materials were nearby, sometimes stone, sometimes brick, and sometimes just packed earth. This flexibility shows how ancient builders were creative and clever, using the land itself as their toolbox. Beyond the materials and methods, ancient cultures also shared symbols and patterns that appeared again and again, even across continents. One common symbol was the serpent. In ancient Egypt, the snake was linked with protection and power. Across the ocean, the Maya and Aztecs also used the image of the serpent, sometimes with wings or feathers, to represent gods of wisdom and rebirth. Another fascinating connection is the use of shapes and special numbers. The Egyptians built their pyramids using proportions based on the golden ratio, a mathematical pattern found in nature, such as in shells or galaxies. Buildings like the Parthenon in Greece and temples in India also seem to follow similar mathematical rules. This shows a shared human love for harmony, beauty, and balance. All these links between pyramids, mounds, stone circles, temples, and walls show that ancient people everywhere were guided by similar dreams: to understand the universe, to honour their gods, to measure time, and to leave behind something that would last forever. Even though they spoke different languages and lived in distant lands, they looked up at the same stars and were inspired to build wonders that still move us today. Recently, researchers have found some strange and interesting energy-related events around these ancient monuments. These discoveries have started ongoing talks and debates among experts, while also filling many others with amazement. One of the most unusual discoveries involves strange magnetic and electric effects inside the pyramid. Scientists have noticed that the Great Pyramid seems to collect and focus electromagnetic energy, especially radio waves, in its inner rooms. It's almost as if the pyramid works like a giant antenna, pulling in unseen energy and concentrating it into certain areas. This is especially clear in the central parts of the pyramid, where the energy seems to be strongest. Another strange event happens around the very top of the pyramid, called the apex. Some researchers say they have found what they call an energy vortex, a kind of spinning field of energy rising from the peak. They claim this mysterious energy becomes stronger at certain times of day, or when the sun, stars, or planets line up in special ways. Although not fully understood, this still puzzles scientists and excites alternative researchers. There have also been reports of static electricity building up around the pyramid, especially near the top. Visitors and investigators have sometimes felt a tingling feeling on their skin, like a light electric shock, or seen tiny sparks when touching the stone under certain weather conditions. While these reports are not yet proven, they raise interesting questions about how the pyramid might react with its surroundings. Scientists have also looked into the idea that the shape and design of pyramids might affect the world around them in small ways. Some tests have shown that pyramid-shaped objects, even tiny ones made for experiments, can influence plants and living materials. In some studies, seeds kept inside small pyramid models grew faster and looked healthier than seeds grown in normal conditions. Some believe this happens because the pyramid shape helps collect energy that supports growth. Even more surprising are findings about how pyramid-shaped spaces can help preserve food. Researchers have noticed that fruits and vegetables kept inside these models tend to dry out instead of rotting, keeping their shape much longer than normal. Scientists think this might be because the pyramid creates a small zone with less moisture, where bacteria and fungi can't grow easily, slowing down decay. Still, not everyone agrees on how or why these effects happen. While many experiments show strange results, more research is needed to truly understand the science behind them. Scientists want to find out whether these effects can be repeated, and if pyramid shapes really have special energy-related powers. The sound behavior inside the pyramids is also very interesting. In the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, for example, sound acts in powerful and unusual ways. Researchers found that this room has certain vibration frequencies, especially around 20 Hz, which is just below what human ears can hear. This deep sound, though silent, can still be felt by the body, giving visitors a feeling of vibration or even awe when inside. Another odd sound effect is how the pyramid can direct and carry sound. In some rooms and hallways, even a soft whisper can travel far and still be heard clearly. Some scientists think the ancient Egyptians may have used this during rituals or ceremonies. Others believe it's simply an amazing result of clever building design. Tests on the outer surface of the pyramid also show that it can reflect and scatter sound waves in unusual ways. The exact patterns of how the pyramid handles sound are still not fully known, and many researchers believe this might be another sign of advanced ancient knowledge, perhaps shared by other old cultures that also built pyramids and mysterious stone monuments. Besides all this, the pyramids are constantly hit by cosmic radiation, tiny, high-energy particles from exploding stars, faraway galaxies and other space events. These rays interact with everything on Earth, including the pyramids. Because the pyramids are made of giant stone blocks, they can block, scatter, and absorb some of this radiation. Scientists have used this fact with a method called muon scanning. This technique uses small particles called muons, which are made when cosmic rays hit the atmosphere. These muons can travel through solid rock, and by measuring how many pass through the pyramid, scientists can create an X-ray-like image of its inside. Using this method, they have already found hidden rooms and spaces inside the Great Pyramid without removing a single stone. These discoveries not only help us learn more about the pyramids, but also help scientists develop new ways to scan and study other ancient buildings, or even modern ones. The idea that something built more than 4,500 years ago is now helping us understand both the past and the laws of physics is truly amazing. In recent years, scientists have also noticed other strange energy behaviors around the pyramids. At the very top of the Great Pyramid, they have measured concentrated electromagnetic energy, not only inside the rooms but also under the base. Some think the shape and materials of the pyramid naturally gather and focus energy in special ways. Some daring studies even suggest that these energy fields might slow down decay or affect living things. Though this is still debated, the idea keeps drawing interest. Heat cameras have also found hotspots on the pyramid's surface, areas that are warmer and hard to explain. These warm patches may come from hidden inner structures or from the unique limestone used to build the pyramid. Ultrasound scans have also found strange vibrations and echoes inside the pyramid's rooms. These could point to hidden qualities in the design that help focus or direct energy in specific ways. But like many other discoveries, these ideas still need more careful study before any sure answers can be given. There's also a surprising link between the pyramids and the Earth itself, the way these giant structures seem to affect underground water. Because the pyramids are so heavy, they press down on the ground below, squeezing the rock and earth. This pressure can change how underground water moves. In some cases, the deep foundations of the pyramids may block or redirect natural water paths. This can change local plants, soil, and even the stability of the pyramids over time. The link between these ancient buildings and the ground beneath them shows how complex and unexpected the effects of architecture can be, even thousands of years later. The Giza plateau in Egypt, where the famous pyramids stand, has long amazed scientists and visitors. But in recent years, researchers have noticed some very unusual weather and environmental effects happening around these ancient monuments. These strange signs suggest that the pyramids might actually influence the air, temperature, and even electricity in their surroundings. One of the most curious discoveries is the appearance of small spinning whirlwinds, called dust devils, near the base of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. These tiny tornado-like swirls of sand and air seem to appear more often near the pyramid than elsewhere in the desert. Scientists think the pyramid's special shape, with its flat base and pointed top, might cause air to move in ways that form these mini whirlwinds. The smooth, slanted sides and the pyramid's alignment with the sun and wind may help create the unique weather around it. Another surprising finding is how quickly the temperature changes near the pyramids. Researchers have measured temperature differences of about 5 degrees Celsius, that's 9 degrees Fahrenheit, between the pyramid's base and the nearby desert. This happens because the heavy stone blocks heat up and cool down differently than the sand around them. The stones absorb heat during the day and slowly release it at night, creating small areas of warmer or cooler air that don't follow normal desert patterns. Even more amazing is the rise in electrical activity around the Giza plateau, especially during the hot and dry Khamsin winds. These winds blow through the region in the spring, bringing dust and dry air. During this time, scientists have noticed stronger electric fields near the pyramids. Some experts think the limestone blocks, full of certain minerals, along with the pyramid's shape and the weather, might help build up static electricity or create local electric fields. But this is still being studied, and more research is needed to understand it fully. While scientists explore these discoveries, it's important to remember that the pyramids have amazed the world for thousands of years. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, for example, was built more than 4,500 years ago and still stands strong today. While many other ancient buildings have fallen, the pyramids remain massive, silent, and unbroken. Their great strength comes from several smart choices made by the ancient Egyptians. First, they used limestone, a natural rock mostly made of calcium carbonate. Over time, when exposed to air and moisture, this stone goes through a change called case hardening. Its surface becomes tougher and more protective, like natural armor. This means the longer the stone stands, the stronger it becomes. Second, the pyramid's design helps it last. Its wide base and narrowing sides spread the weight evenly, stopping pressure from building up in one spot and preventing cracks or collapse. Also, the sloped sides help rainwater run off quickly, protecting the structure from erosion and water damage. The dry desert weather has also played a big part. Egypt's climate is mostly hot and dry, with very little rain and almost no freezing cold. In many other parts of the world, freezing and melting can break rocks over time, but in Egypt the pyramids are protected from this kind of damage. Because of this perfect mix of smart building, strong materials and desert weather, the pyramids have stayed amazingly well preserved for over 4,000 years. But the mystery doesn't end there. For hundreds of years, people have reported seeing strange lights, ghostly fogs, and even unknown figures around the pyramids, especially at night. These lights are often described as glowing balls that float in the air or move around in odd ways. Some have even been caught on camera, but no one knows for sure what causes them. They might be reflections, tricks of the eye, or maybe something completely different. Other visitors have seen thin fogs or misty clouds that seem to appear out of nowhere near the base of the pyramids, even on clear, dry days. These mists sometimes move in creepy ways or form strange shapes, which only adds to the feeling of mystery. And at night, a few people have said they saw shadowy shapes walking among the stones. Skeptics often say it's just tricks of light and shadow, but others believe these could be linked to the ancient Egyptians' strong spiritual beliefs, maybe even echoes of souls from the past. Also, scientists and visitors have noticed visual tricks or mirages near the pyramids, where faraway shapes look like buildings or landscapes that aren't really there. These illusions have made some people believe there might be hidden rooms or secret parts of the pyramids that haven't been found yet. One of the most mind-blowing scientific discoveries comes from physics. Using very advanced tools like atomic clocks, scientists have found that time itself moves just a little differently at the top of a pyramid than it does at the bottom. This effect is called gravitational time dilation, and it's something predicted by Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity. Here's how it works. Because the pyramid is so massive, its gravity slightly affects the flow of time. The difference is extremely small, only a few tiny fractions of a second over thousands of years, but it's real and can be measured. What's even more interesting is that the pyramid's shape might make this effect a little stronger by focusing gravitational energy. While this idea is still being studied, it shows that the ancient pyramids are not just amazing old monuments, they're also windows into the deepest laws of the universe. All around the ancient world, long before airplanes or the internet, people on different continents were building structures that looked surprisingly alike. Pyramids. These tall, triangle-shaped monuments rose from the ground in places separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. yet somehow they shared very similar shapes, purposes, and even building methods. It's one of the most fascinating examples of how human creativity and imagination can grow in many different places, completely on their own. In Africa, the most famous pyramids are, of course, those in ancient Egypt. These incredible stone giants were built more than 4,500 years ago as tombs for powerful pharaohs, kings who were believed to become gods after death. The most well-known of these is the Great Pyramid of Giza, a structure so large and exact that it still amazes builders today. But pyramid building in Africa didn't end in Egypt. Far to the south, in what is now Sudan, the ancient kingdom of Kush kept the tradition alive. The Kushites built their own pyramids, many of which were smaller and steeper than those in Egypt, but just as meaningful. They built hundreds of them over time, long after Egypt had stopped making its own. Now imagine crossing the Atlantic Ocean to the ancient Americas. Here too, pyramid-like structures rose from the jungles and plains. In Mesoamerica, an area that includes today's Mexico, Guatemala and Belize, the Maya and Aztecs built step pyramids at the center of their great cities. These weren't tombs like those in Egypt, but temples where priests held sacred ceremonies and offered gifts to the gods. Some were painted in bright colors and decorated with carvings of snakes, jaguars, and heavenly symbols. Farther south, in what is now Peru, the Moche culture built huge pyramid-shaped temples out of clay bricks. These buildings, called huacas, were used for ceremonies and worship. Even in what is now the United States, the Mississippian peoples built giant earthen mounds. Some of these, like Monk's Mound in Cahokia, Illinois, had pyramid-like shapes and were used for religious and political purposes. Asia also had its own pyramids. In China, more than 2,000 years ago, the first emperor Qin Shi Huang was buried under a huge earthen pyramid surrounded by the famous terracotta army. And in Indonesia, the great Buddhist temple of Borobudur was built more than 1,200 years ago. This stepped pyramid, made of stone, rises like a mountain and is covered in carvings that tell sacred stories. What's amazing is that all these pyramid structures, from Egypt to Mexico, from Peru to China, share a similar shape, wide at the bottom and narrow at the top. This design wasn't just chosen for beauty, it was also very strong. A pyramid spreads weight evenly and can stand tall without falling, making it the perfect design for ancient builders who had no cranes or machines. Another thing these pyramids shared was their link to the divine. In Egypt, pyramids were tombs for pharaohs, built to help them reach the afterlife. In Mesoamerica, pyramids were holy places where priests spoke to the gods. In all these cultures, the pyramid was a bridge between earth and the heavens. Even the ways these pyramids were built show surprising similarities. Many ancient builders used a method of stacking stone or brick in layers, often starting with a stepped shape. Later, they might smooth out the sides with carefully cut stones. The fine stonework seen in Egypt, where giant blocks were fitted so closely that not even a knife can fit between them, is similar to the stone-cutting skills of the Inca in South America, who built temples and fortresses with the same care and precision. The step pyramids of Mesoamerica and the smooth pyramids of Egypt may look different, but both reflect the deep beliefs and creativity of their builders. In cities like Teotihuacan and Chichen Itza, the Mesoamerican pyramids had wide stairways leading up to temples at the top, used for rituals and sacrifices. These buildings were often rebuilt and made taller by each new ruler over the years. In contrast, Egypt's pyramid style changed from early stepped designs, like the step pyramid of Djoser, to the smooth-sided pyramids we know today. The Great Pyramid of Giza, with its perfect angles and smooth limestone covering, was built as a final resting place for a pharaoh and filled with treasures for his afterlife. While the exact purpose of these pyramids was different, some were tombs, others temples, they all stood as powerful symbols of human faith, power, and skill. And they all reached upward, as if trying to touch the sky. But maybe the most mysterious thing is how similar the pyramids are, even though the cultures that built them were so far apart. Some pyramids are perfectly lined up with stars. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, points almost exactly to true north. In Mexico, the pyramids of Teotihuacan line up with the Pleiades star cluster. This kind of star alignment shows that ancient builders were not only great architects but also careful watchers of the sky. There's even proof that these ancient cultures used advanced math ideas. Both the Egyptian and Mesoamerican pyramids seem to include the golden ratio in their design, a number often seen in nature that many believe creates beauty and balance in art and buildings. All these shared features have made some researchers wonder whether the people who built these pyramids might have been connected somehow. Did knowledge travel across the world long before modern ships or planes? Or did different cultures come up with the same ideas on their own, inspired by similar needs and by watching nature? Most experts think these similarities are examples of independent invention. In other words, people around the world face the same challenge: how to build large, strong, amazing monuments, and came up with similar answers. But the mystery still inspires curiosity and wonder. Over 4,500 years ago, in the dry lands of northern Africa, the ancient Egyptians built the Great Pyramid of Giza, a masterpiece of skill and precision. What makes this pyramid truly astonishing is how perfectly it aligns with the four main directions of the Earth: north, south, east, and west. Its sides are so exact in their placement that some experts think it might have worked as a giant stone calendar. During the solstices and equinoxes, the sun's movement would cast shadows in special patterns, helping the Egyptians track time and the changing of the seasons. Far across the ocean, in the jungles of Mesoamerica, the ancient Maya were creating their own wonders under the same sky. One of their greatest achievements was the Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. This pyramid was designed so that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun creates the illusion of a great serpent sliding down the steps. The Maya saw this as the descent of Kukulkan, their feathered serpent god. This breathtaking sight showed how well the Maya understood the paths of the sun and how deeply they tied their beliefs to the heavens. To the south, in the towering Andes Mountains of Peru, the Inca built Machu Picchu, a city that seems to touch the sky itself. Within it stand structures aligned with the sunrise during the June solstice, revealing the Incas' precise knowledge of the sun's movement. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world in Southeast Asia, the temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia were built to align perfectly with the spring equinox. Across continents and centuries, these creations show a powerful human desire to connect the Earth below with the stars above. Even today, scientists are amazed by the accuracy and purpose of these alignments. They continue to ask how ancient builders, without modern tools, could have achieved such perfection. It's clear that many pyramids were far more than tombs or temples. They were also observatories and cosmic markers, linking human life with the rhythms of the universe. Despite being built by cultures separated by thousands of miles and years, pyramids share remarkable similarities. Nearly all have the same basic shape, a wide base that narrows to a single point or flat top. This design made them naturally strong and stable, able to endure earthquakes, storms, and centuries of erosion. Most were built with massive stone blocks that were cut and placed with amazing precision. In some pyramids, the stones fit together so tightly that even a knife blade cannot slide between them. Inside, many pyramids contain secret chambers and narrow passages carefully planned to serve religious or ceremonial purposes. Some of these hidden rooms align with stars or planets, showing that their builders were not only architects but also astronomers. Constructing such spaces inside tons of solid stone demanded careful thought, an advanced understanding of weight and balance. Many pyramids were built in steps, layer upon layer, rising like a giant staircase toward the heavens. Some kept this stepped design, while others were smoothed over to form sleek, shining surfaces. The steps made it easier for workers to transport heavy stones upward and provided stable platforms during construction. Different civilizations built pyramids for different reasons. In ancient Egypt, they were majestic tombs meant to guard the pharaohs and their treasures, ensuring the king's safe journey to the afterlife. In Central America, the Maya and Aztecs built pyramids as sacred temples where priests performed ceremonies and sacrifices to honor their gods and maintain balance in the world. Many of these pyramids were rebuilt over generations, each layer preserving centuries of faith and history. In Mesopotamia, the people built ziggurats, massive, pyramid-like towers of mud brick with temples on top, meant to bring worshippers closer to the divine. In Nubia, to the south of Egypt, smaller but steeper pyramids were built as royal tombs, showing Egypt's influence on its neighbours. Farther east in ancient China, emperors were buried in enormous pyramid-shaped mounds, some possibly designed with astronomical significance. For centuries, archaeologists have been fascinated by this global pattern of pyramid building. Why did so many distant civilizations choose the same form? One idea is that pyramids served as tombs for great rulers, keeping their bodies and riches safe while guiding their souls to eternity. Another theory is that pyramids symbolized power and unity, the ability of a ruler to command thousands of workers and vast resources. A third idea is that they were built as cosmic tools, calendars that marked solstices, equinoxes, and the turning of the seasons, vital for farming and survival. Perhaps all these explanations are true in different ways. Some cultures might have chosen the pyramid simply because it's one of the strongest shapes in nature. A simple, stable form that could rise high into the sky without advanced technology. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built about 4,500 years ago, remains the most famous example. But it was not the first or the only one. In South America, the Caral civilization of Peru built their own pyramids around 4,600 years ago, almost the same time as Egypt's. Later, between about 2,500 and 1,000 years ago, the Maya and Aztecs constructed their Great Pyramids, while Nubia built its own versions around 2,700 years ago. In Asia, pyramid-like monuments such as Borobudur in Indonesia, built about 1,200 years ago, and the Chinese tomb of the first emperor, built about 2,200 years ago, continued the tradition. Across all these cultures, the pyramid remained a powerful symbol of strength, faith, and connection between heaven and earth. What's even more fascinating is that many of these civilizations, though separated by oceans and centuries, used surprisingly similar techniques. Both the Egyptians and the Maya built step pyramids with inner chambers and precise astronomical alignments. They even shared architectural features like corbelled arches, showing that they had deep knowledge of balance and stability. Some pyramids also include advanced mathematical ideas, such as the golden ratio, and reflect a careful understanding of the cosmos. It's astonishing to see how people, living worlds apart, created structures that mirror each other in both beauty and purpose. Whether these similarities came from shared knowledge or from the universal human imagination, they remind us that ancient people were far more advanced and connected to nature than we often realize. The mystery of the pyramids, how they were built, why they were aligned with the stars, and what they truly meant, continues to inspire wonder and curiosity even today.